Hello, it's Vlad here. We're back for another AAR. We're looking this time at the game 2.5J. I am playing France, and here with me for this video is the Russia player for this game, JPM. Hello, JPM.
Oh, thanks for having me, Vlad. Yes, I played Russia in this game and looking forward to telling its story with you.
Yeah, we had quite the dynamic, the two of us in this game, so there was simply no one else that we could do this video with. I'm hoping as well, with France covering most of the board and Russia covering basically the rest of it, we're going to look pretty much at everything that happened in this game. JPM, why did you choose Russia for this game?
So Russia was a power that saw some balance changes, which I think you're immediately thinking of yourself as you zoom into Zaysan, which gained a dot. So the borders did not change, I believe, but they gained a dot, as well as in the far west, the borders changed around Sweden. That made it, I think the theory was to make it a little bit easier for Sweden to attack Russia, so I was actually a bit nervous about that, but felt it might work in the other direction just as well. But yeah, especially Zaysan seemed like a very nice addition that made the East easier to justify investing in, because that's often been a weakness in Russia. Russia, historically, I've played IMTIP since the very first wave, and it's not a known powerhouse by any means. So Russia, I feel, might be in its strongest position ever. So I was very tempted to bring it on, or to take it on. That was my thought process around Russia. I'd also played a number of colonial games recently, despite having begun as a strictly regional player, so was interested in jumping back to the regional side, if only barely, with such a large one.
Yeah, nice. I think this Zaysan change is absolutely enormous for Russia, because really in the past, for Russia to try and get a double or get a dot in the east, they'd be going out to Yakutsk, which in my opinion is such a trap.
Spread out, and it's not clear where you go from there either.
Yeah. So we'd often see a lot of Russia's opening down to two meds, or down to even Zaysan, to have an effect around Yarkand Turfan, even without either of these being a dot. So the fact that there's a dot there in Zaysan now means that Russia's basically always going to go there. So my thinking with France, I'd had a couple of regional games. My Netherlands game kind of taught me how stressful and how much press there is involved in colonial games. So I had a couple of regional games to varying levels of success. I had an Aymara game where I got absolutely dumpstered and murdered. And then I had a Qing game, which my last video was about, and that one I ended up winning a duo victory in that game. So that was my first win. So I figured, yeah, I've won that game. We've had a bit of time off. Time to come back in and play a colonial. And I don't like playing what people think is the strongest stuff. And really, at the moment, I think when you look at the colonials, the strongest ones are England and Portugal. So I didn't really want to be an England abuser when I knew that there were going to be England changes coming up. So originally I kind of went into this thinking I was going to play Poland, because I thought, well, I've never played a mid-sized power, so I should give Poland a go because it's got a bit of colonial stuff as well. And then for whatever reason, a couple of days before sign-ups, I decided to play France instead. Particularly, there's a couple of changes as well for this map around India, which I found really interesting for France. And they're not changes that affect France directly, but the main one here is that Ceylon now borders Madurai directly, which is going to encourage a lot of Dutch to go for Madurai. And also, Aceh has been moved away from England. So this was a bit of an England nerf. So England can't really come out to Aceh. They have to go for Madurai if they want one of those two old dots that they used to get one of. Now, a lot of Dutch are just going to walk straight into Madurai because they are not going to condone the English being right next to their core. So I figured if I can get the Dutch to go to Madurai, it means that there's no longer any opportunity for the Dutch to snipe Reunion year one, which is a really nasty play that a lot of Dutch make to kind of stifle French growth early. And I came into this thinking that it might be quite nice to see if I could be the Indian Ocean colonial here and have Netherlands focus more on India, all that kind of thing.
It's fascinating to me that you anticipated this ahead of time. We'll see how the game develops, but I had always read your activities in the Indian Ocean as being reactive as opposed to pre-planned. So that's interesting to hear. I'll also say on colonial strengths, I mean, I don't think anybody will call me controversial when I say that I think the Dutch are the most challenging colonial to play.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Having had that experience, I can definitely see the appeal of France as a colonial that is perhaps less spread across the world and more manageable. What's interesting, I definitely would have agreed with your assessment of England and Portugal as the most powerful maybe a few waves ago, but going into this wave, some of the changes actually I think affected those powers pretty significantly, notably in India and in the sort of North Atlantic region. But with the end result being, I think we've noticed in the 2.5 wave, which is the wave this game belonged to, there's been a surge of Spanish success. I don't know whether you've noticed that as well.
Yeah, a lot of strong Spains. I think Inc. kind of paved the way for that. He soloed a game. I think it was in 2.3 or somewhere around there, and people.
That was 2.1, and I finished second in that game.
Oh, so. Was that your Abyssinia game?
That was my Abyssinia.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think was probably one of the... It was a really good Abyssinia game, but you simply cannot keep pace with a colonial that is absolutely run away and facing no resistance, especially from the other colonials. Which, having come off that experience going into this game, the only things I'd played, I think, between that game and this game were a number of invitationals or subvariants. This was my very next wave game after that game that you've mentioned, and it colored my approach to it because I was concerned that Russia, being so isolated from the colonials, would be powerless to do anything, as I was when I was Abyssinia, should a colonial power get out of hand and begin to snowball. So I had made an early note to self to try to cross-map press and keep the colonials in keeping each other in check as best I could.
That's a very interesting point, JPM. I wonder if that will come up again at all throughout the video. Because you basically told me immediately that was your worry. You were like, I've had too many runaway colonials spiral out of control. And I was like, I'm glad you're being honest, but also you're going to try and fuck with me, aren't you?
Well, so here's where I need to come clean on something, which was we're now bleeding into early press. So don't tell me if I'm going too fast.
No, we can start talking about early press.
But in early press, before first moves, we're all getting to know each other as players. You very annoyingly for me, as the top of the pyramid, shared a list of every player and their IDR, right, which is their their Imperial Diplomacy. Is it ranking or reputation?
It might be ranking actually. Yeah.
It was I think it was originally reputation, but then they came up with another reputation system for more good behavior. And if I'm going to be completely honest, Vlad, I'd seen your name around, but we'd never played together before. No. So I hadn't identified you as a threat until you shared me this ranking, which also had you. I don't know whether you were second or third, but the next among or the very next strongest player there, and clearly among the colonials the most experienced player, because a lot of the colonials were either new or had mixed success. So that put me on my radar, and it's perhaps why I was so honest with you, because I didn't actually mean to target you in particular. If anything, I wanted you to be strong because I saw the English as likely the colonial to threaten me most.
Yeah, and I got that read from you as well. And there was a certain move that I think pushed the needle more in the direction where you did want to squash me. But we could come to that move when we get to that move, because it'll come up pretty quickly. But I only shared that chart with you because I wanted to highlight that I knew that you were a threat, but also that I knew others would be coming for me, because pre-game there'd been a lot of talk about the two of us up the top. So I didn't know that you hadn't seen a lot of it. But yeah, there were some people coming into the public square and saying, holy shit, Vlad and JPM are just going to run away with it. And I thought, fuck, I need to let JPM know that, like, I'm not going to just be fear-mongering IDR. the whole game.
And
Because people will do the same to me. I mean, yeah, exactly. So that was the idea. Yeah, we'll start with your area, I think, talking about early press. Did you know many of your neighbours before?
I knew most of my neighbours, and what was really interesting was there were a number of my neighbours who I'd known from very early Imp Dip days. These were players who were returning to the hobby after having played, in some of the first waves and then not played for quite some time. So that would be on the Mughals, I believe her username was Ashwode.
Yes.
And then on Safavids as well, we had Inferno, who I think had recently had a good game. Like Inferno's a player who I think is very strong. He plays infrequently, but is typically successful when he does play. On Qing, the player on Qing I was not familiar with, but I saw from your handy chart that she was not inexperienced and had some success, was at least a competent player at a very baseline. With a similar assessment for the Tokugawa player. The Tokugawa player, again, some success, nothing terrifying, but certainly competent. And then, of course, Ming is Shar, who is a player I've played with a number of times, and I've spectated her games, and she's spectated my games. And then we've had friction in the past where she had a very strong Abyssinia game that would have probably made most victories, but I snagged a solo at her expense. So, some interesting tensions to negotiate as familiarity, but also tension. And then in the West, again, a competent player on Ottomans. The player on Poland is Mi18 guy who plays a lot, but I think I would recommend he press more. So I was a little bit concerned that I was worried. I tend to be a pretty high press player and was worried that I might not get all the reassurances, or that I might annoy him with how frequently I'd be pinging looking for reassurances.
I had exactly
then
the same.
Sweden and Austria were both new players, I believe.
Yes, Austria certainly was. Yeah.
And I can add that Ayutthaya was also another strong, competent player.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, all of Asia. There were no holes in Asia. Everybody in Asia knew what they were doing.
Yeah, and I think that was part of the point of my chart, was because there was you up the top, there was me in second, but then we had like Qing, Ming, Tokugawa, Safavids, Mughals, I think all in a row as the next. Ayutthaya as well. We were like, holy shit, Asia is stacked, and there's a lot of like new players elsewhere.
So yes, I certainly didn't underestimate any of my neighbors. And then it was interesting because on the colonial front, which perhaps I should hand the baton on to you, we had a mixture of experience and inexperience, which is, very interesting given the demands of playing a colonial power.
Yeah, I think the colonial makeup was an interesting one this game, because I didn't know this player before, but you mentioned that they were an old-timer, which was Banana on the Dutch here, who you reliably told me would have a strong start and then crash and burn in the mid-game. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. But yeah,
Banana has played Dutch a number of times, and typically with similar outcomes.
They made a strong impression early on in press. They were a nice presser. Victor Fan on England was a very interesting player here. And I think they'd had one previous game. They were doing all right in that game. So I thought, well, I'm not going to underestimate this guy. We'll just see what happens with this triangle, because the England, France, Netherlands triangle is always so volatile and you never know what's going to happen. JK was our Spanish player, and they were definitely a new player, but again, similarly, they were a strong presser and we got off to a good start. And then probably the person who I thought of as probably the strongest other colonial, who was Portugal, who Michael was playing another game, I think, as England at the time, and was board top or second top at that time. I don't know if he ended up winning, but I certainly not only was it that he was doing well in a game, but also Mads decided to spec him. So I thought, okay, so we might have some decent advice going on for this Portugal player here.
What was of the Portugal player as well was that they seemed relatively new but very level-headed, and when I looked at their roster of specs, it was not just Mads, but they had a number of strong spectators, which made me think, okay, either experienced in classic diplomacy, or either way, they will have good advice and certainly will be an interesting player to watch.
Yeah, Ottomans was a player I'd come across before in my Netherlands game back in Asta, and they were playing Mughals that game. They did all right, but we had a really nice press relationship, and we'd often just be chatting to each other about stuff. So I certainly kind of keyed into Ottomans as someone that could maybe help me crush Austria if I needed, help me crush Spain if I needed, help me counterbalance a runaway Russia, because I got a very similar read to you, which was that Poland didn't press very much at the start of the game. And that seemed to be something that could decide Europe. I have seen it happen in a previous game. I can't remember. It was the Netherlands game where we had a Poland player who just didn't press at all, and then complained to people when they stabbed her. And she died very, very quickly. So I remember writing in my void, I like getting on with people who press a lot. I need to use this game to practice pressing with someone who is not a high presser and see whether I can get more out of Poland than the other people around, because it sounds like all of us are having the same experience, not just me.
Well, talking about, I guess, the early press, Eastern Europe was interesting in that both the Swedish and the Austrian players who were new to Imperial Diplomacy, but I believe not new to diplomacy generally, they maybe had quite some classic experience. They both had some pretty aggressive plans and were immediately discussing, well, what would it look like if we all converged on Poland? And, they pulled the Ottomans into that as well, or I think I might have suggested that the Ottomans get involved in that as well, because that meant they were not looking in my direction at any rate and had something to collaborate with me. Ironically, I was a little bit hesitant about my own engagement. As much as I was portraying enthusiasm, I find it's always a dangerous move to commit very early, as any power really, but especially Russia as a power that has a lot of neighbors and so can't afford to be under-defended on any particular front because they've overcommitted on another. So I was a bit nervous about that, and especially because I think the Russian portion of Polish dots can be limited, especially if you're sharing with that many other players. So there was a bit of a caveat on that. If I move over to the Ottomans and the Safavids,
the famous triangle,
very interesting conversations. I probably had the best press of anybody with anyone with the Safavids. And the three of us all were very keen on, speaking to a peaceful Caucasus for once, which I did mean sincerely. And interestingly, and music to my ears, the Safavid player expressed an interest in playing heavy on fleets in order to break out of the famous Safavid trap of getting caught after their 25th dot and struggling to grow beyond that. That suited me fine if they wanted to build fleets which would never threaten Russia. I wasn't believing that this would ever last, and I did believe I'd want to take dots from one or the other, if not likely both. So I did what I could to agree to a three-way alliance at the beginning while assuring each of them that I would be ready to turn on the other. And again, meaning that genuinely, that I didn't have a strong preference if it went one way or the other, that I would just wanted to make sure that I wasn't the one being the odd one out. The Mughals I had some press with, but it wasn't particularly extensive. I think I wanted to actually see a reasonably strong Mughal power, but perhaps more south-facing. And then with the Qing and the Ming, there's a power that I regretted not having more press with. It was probably the Qing, where I was worried that they were defaulting to a hostile stance against Russia, that they weren't interested in talking through different permutations. It seemed like they may have entered the game with their mind made up.
Yeah.
But then I didn't do much to press them otherwise, I think. And I had a lot of good press with Ming, who again was a player I know well, and Shar. And that also always seemed like a more viable alliance, because I could always push Ming to fight Mughals, and I could support them in that, and fight Qing with me, and they could support me in that, and they would have other options. Qing only has so many options that don't involve going against Russia. So my early bias was certainly facing supporting Ming, and of course I wanted a very strong Tokugawa, so I discouraged anybody from doing a Toku Kyushu crusher, and even the Inuit advise them to think of the Qing as a natural enemy first and foremost. The Inuit player we haven't mentioned, they also were on the rather low press side, which perhaps is part of that. And I have to confess to immediately working against them after I discovered that both Athabasca and the Ute Shoshone players were relatively new to, or if not relatively, maybe completely. I think this might have been their first games for both of them.
I think
at
so,
least for
yeah.
Athabasca. But they were very, very enthusiastic and pressing a lot and putting in a lot of effort, which encouraged me. And so I advised the two of them to ally each other, which, without pointing it out deliberately, of course, likely comes at the expense of Inuit and colonials in the area, which was a happy, side effect, given my earlier concerns about too much early colonial success being an issue I wouldn't be able to solve otherwise. So the two of them did get along pretty well from early press, and I'll take any credit I got in helping set that up, but it may well have happened without me anyways, given, of course, they'd be talking to each other significantly and had less press with the Inuit player as they were not as active.
Yeah, it's a nice little segue into it, because this little area up here in North America was very interesting. And having looked back at the press, Athabasca basically came in immediately into this game. And when we talk about people who were IDR hunting, Athabasca immediately set up a triple channel with Inuits and Ute Shoshone and said, we need to kill France. Which was absolutely terrifying to see. I had no idea about this at GameStart, because I think similar to you, I had very enthusiastic chats with Athabasca at the start of the game, and I thought, oh, great, this is going to be someone I can work with. They proposed to me very early that they support me up into EU Itchy in the first year, and I thought, okay, here's an angle I can possibly look at. We've got a nice player there to work with, but we'll see how that all goes. Inuits was a very interesting player. Their icon and their name were, this was the Pastor Man, and their icon was a Pastor Man, and I thought, this is the most alt account bullshit I've ever seen. So they were a very interesting character to press with this game. In talking about the press in this area, Athabasca tried to set up this deal with me, but the English, French, Netherlands...
The deal being EU Itchy. The deal being the one around EU Itchy.
Yes, to support me into EU Itchy. I tried to switch it around where I said, well, how about I support you to EU and I get Ojibwe? But Athabasca wanted Ojibwe, so that one wasn't going to happen. Yeah, the England, France, Netherlands triangle was probably the most important thing for the first year for my game, in that I want the two of them fighting. So I want to try and set the two of them up against each other. I say to England, I'd like to work with you against the Netherlands. And I say to the Netherlands, I'd like to work with you against England. And England's response to me asking this was no. Which absolutely terrifying when you have an England saying, I'm not interested in fighting the Dutch. So that skewed everything in my mind about what I had to do into thinking, holy shit, is this just an EN and I'm about to get massacred? What can I do? But I'd been talking to Banana, and Banana was saying, yeah, I'm down to attack the English at some point when we'll grab some neutrals and then we'll have a go at it.
Fascinating approach to press. Just say flat out no. Was this not no, but maybe later, or was this just no interest in that?
It was just no, I don't really want to fight the Dutch early. So
that's understandable to an extent, in that, like I was saying earlier, I think it's often advisable not to commit too early in any direction.
Yeah. But I think in this triangle...
To not take extra efforts to reassure you.
Yeah, like when I came in and I'm like, so are we going to attack the Dutch and just run an EF? And they'd say no. I'm like, oh, okay. Hi, Netherlands. Like, it was pretty easy for me to make that decision. And even easier again when England tried to parlay this into a triple. And my read on it, I was, of course, worried that it was just an EN and that I was on the outside and they were both playing me. But England set up this chat about running a triple but hiding it from the board so they don't get terrified about three colonials running away with the game. So they wanted each of us to, be spreading rumors about not being happy with each other and, oh, I think I'm going to stab this person here and I think I'm going to do this there. And it was some real Illuminati shit that England was trying to set up here. And we agreed in the chat, and I went to Banana and I just said, so we're just going to use this to get good position and then stab England, right? And Netherlands said, yeah, of course. So I think Banana and I were of the same mind in this regard.
I mean, the triple would have probably been my worst nightmare as a Russia terrified of colonial collaboration. However, I think, and here's where perhaps England being less experienced than you and Banana on the Netherlands shines through. Players who have experience in the game realize that you also have to be mindful of showing weakness because that can attract opportunistic attacks. So there is a consequence to spreading rumors saying, oh, well, yes, I'm at odds with so-and-so and I'm at odds with so-and-so, in that you might invite pressure against yourself or against those players because other players are assuming, okay, well, sounds like they'll have their hands full. Maybe I'll be able to snag a dot or two on my front.
Yeah.
So it's not without consequences to spread rumors of conflict.
Yeah, particularly, and even the other way, because England told me that they set up a deal with the Inuits whereby England would support them into Anticosti in year 2. And I was like, well, don't promise that. Like, because I don't mind if you're trying to give the impression you might attack me, but if you're encouraging the Inuits to attack me, that is actively sabotaging my position. That's not just innuendo. So when England told me this, I was like, I can't work with this player. I need to stab this player. But on the other side of it, I was getting good intel from England because England was the player that told me that Athapaska was the mastermind to try and kill me. And it said, you were in an insane situation, France. It's a regional triple. They all want to kill you. And my read of early Inuits press was not that this was the case, but England was being so firm about it and so honest about other things that I believed them. So I backed out of the EU-Itchy deal, and I said to Athapaska, hey, actually, I think let's just have a pretty non-committal year 1. We'll take what we get, and then we can have a look at hitting Inuits at some point. And Athapaska had told me they were very, very worried about an EF, and I said, well, I don't plan on running an EF at this stage, to try and assuage Athapaska that this wouldn't be the case. Reading the press between the three of them, they basically were all like, yeah, colonials are bad. I think Athapaska very quickly got into the minds of Ute and Inuit about this. And I think you played some part in the Atha Ute of it all. But
what's fascinating about that to me is I think it's very much a new player inclination, right? They hear about Imperial Diplomacy. Some powers are regional, some power are colonials. Therefore, there's a bit of an us and them dynamic.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's me on Athapaska, I'm awfully reluctant to get into a triple because I'm the meat in the middle, right? If there's going to be a sandwich, I'm the one in the middle, and it can be easily an overextension to push against France. But anyhow,
absolutely, I agree with that full-heartedly. So,
how was your press with the Spanish and the Portuguese?
Yeah, so because of this EFN stuff, I was really worried that it was in fact just an EN. And that I was going to get murdered. And so I very quickly wanted to set up an FPS to try and, I was saying, I'm worried this is happening. England doesn't want to attack the Dutch. I think we need to band together as a 3 and be able to counter them all. So I set up this SBN really quite early in response to what Victor was doing. My press with Spain very early was great, not least because they told me I could get course, which, I mean, great, thanks. I do have to talk about that, don't I? So this area of the map here with course. Austria started the game by immediately asking for Florence, which, I mean, why would the Austrians ever get Florence year 1, is my view on that. And France basically usually goes to Florence instead of course because the Spanish want course. But I knew I was getting course, but I wanted Florence as well, so I tried to negotiate this, but I was trying to figure out what Austria meant because I was like, oh, so do I get Freiburg then if you get Florence? And they were like, no, I'll take Freiburg later and I'll keep Venice as a pocket. And I was like, sorry, so what am I getting out of this deal, Austria? And they said, well, really, I guess it's that you lose Florence, but you don't lose Strasbourg to me in Netherlands. So I was like, oh, so this is a give me Florence or I attack you deal. This is not a deal, this is a threat. And I already knew that the Netherlands were not opening to Köln here because they were going old-fashioned. They were going for Bremen and Ghent as their opening too. So Austria's threat was extremely empty. I knew they weren't going to attack me. And so I wanted Spain on side against Austria because really, I mean, if I'm playing if I'm playing France and you're Austria, you can't have a game. I'm sorry. The two nations are basically chalk and cheese. So
yeah, no, the Austria-France dynamic is so tricky, and I mean, I've been in that position before, and the line around Florence is always a very touchy one because I think the Austrians feel they have limited dots they can go for. So a lot of Austrians feel that Florence should go for theirs. And I would definitely always want to course over Florence if I had the option. But the deal is I don't kill you is never a particularly good one. You want to give players a reason to want to work with you as opposed to bullying them, because that's not really much of an option. And we'll see how that played out on other fronts for me.
Yes.
In terms of the Dutch help for Bremen, I'm realizing that it's possible that was always their plan. I was certainly fear-mongering that the Dutch should be mindful of rapid Spanish expansion through Denmark, because they had some more tweaks in that area that allowed the Swedish to expand quite rapidly while pocketing all sorts of dots. So I was genuinely concerned about that and sort of hoping that the Dutch would be part of the team to mitigate an aggressive Swedish start. But I guess that had benefits for you as well.
Absolutely. And I think it was partly that, which is true because the Swedish can come in for Kiel pretty uncontested year one now. But also partly we all kind of agreed to limit Austria early because Austria was trying to find their fourth dot. And Ottomans, Netherlands, and France all decided to just hold firm. And Austria were like, can I get Florence? I said no. They said, hey, Netherlands, can I get Bremen? And they said no. And they said, Ottomans, can I get Split? Ottomans said no. So
the Austrian approach in press was very heads-on, and it was aggressive. And I think that didn't work well for them because they were constantly sort of pushing to see where they'd have an opening. But in the meanwhile, everybody around them are taking notes of like, okay, watch out. This is somebody who's going to be potentially belligerent. And I was trying to convince them actually to find some way to strike a deal with you because I was hoping that they would not immediately die to you or commit all of their energy into fighting you, because I wanted to ensure that they were not open to a Polish stab against them.
Yep, and they had come to me, and their pitch early on was, so many Austrias and France's fight, how about we do the opposite and we piece it out? And I was like, I was genuinely interested in looking at what that would look like. And their proposal was, well, I get Florence. And why would I ever accept that? So they didn't go about it in the way that would ever convince me. So
it's funny because I'm putting myself in their shoes, and I could see myself trying to make the same pitch, but just pitching it differently, because colonial regional alliances are certainly possible, but they are by definition asymmetrical. And the point that you always want to make as a regional, and that I think you need to be self-aware of and not unreceptive to necessarily as a colonial looking to partner with a regional, is that the regional has no other theaters in which to look for expansion. They exist where they exist, and that's all they have. Whereas colonials do have, a colonial empire by definition, that they can seek growth in different venues and others, as you will demonstrate very well over the course of this game. But yeah, an interesting dynamic there.
The other side of it is that I can get away with stabbing Austria in Europe better because they can't retaliate across the map. If I stab Spain in Europe, Spain can attack me in South America. Spain can attack me in the Caribbean. If I stab Austria in Europe, good luck. Yeah, I backed out of everything in North America. I ensured that England and the Dutch would bounce in Connecticut, in Guadeloupe, in Notsay. I was really hoping it wasn't just an EN. I basically forced them to do those bounces so I didn't have to worry. Yeah, I think the Netherlands asked me for Kalina, which I just said no to, which I think was reasonable because I want. They also then asked me to take it in the fall rather than the spring, and I said that I'd heard a rumor that the English might move to Guiana Current, which I did hear from Majoran, but was never going to happen. But I just said, sorry, I've got
That's such a clear lie from Jacaranda.
Yeah.
That's funny. We haven't talked about the Jacaranda player.
Yeah.
They're an interesting one.
Panda Boy, very interesting player.
It's also, I mean, I get, because I can get the Dutch fear. I'm pretty sure this player, being an experienced Dutch player, has seen or probably experienced themselves that every now and then you'll have a France player that bounces a Dutch player from Belém.
Yeah.
Which can be frustrating. So I can understand where they were coming from, but it's also hard to convince you because there's really no downside to you for making them deal with the risk.
Exactly. Yeah. In West Africa here, I looked at this and I thought, well, I want to see if I can secure Ulata in the first year, because if I don't go for it year one, I'm never going to get it. The Portuguese asked me whether I'd consider bouncing in Dakaru instead, and I was like, I'll see what happens. I'm not sure what the Polish want to do. And I sent Me18 guy a big, long first press message about our collaboration all across the map, and their response to me was okay. And that was all I needed to know, that I was definitely bouncing in Dakaru in the first year. There was
I'm chuckling to myself because I predicted that's exactly, literally, like the word okay. Like that is Me18 guy. And they're a strong player in terms of their tactics and so on. But yeah, don't expect much more than that when it comes to press.
And I just thought, no, there's no way.
They can reliably, if they say okay, I usually will believe them.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I don't know. I did think they might just walk straight into Ndakaru. They might walk for St. Louis. I'm just going to lose West Africa early. I'm going to Ndakaru and taking it in the fall. It'll be fine. South Africa, I made the standard deal with Portugal where I get to go for Mupondo and Portugal get to go for Sakalava. They kind of wanted it the other way around, but France doesn't get a dot in the first year if that happens, because they've got to pick up Barra, and Réunion can't take Sakalava or Barra in the first year. So Mupondo is really nice for the French.
Yeah, although there's often the play of trying to pocket Barra by going for Sakalava with Fort Dauphin.
Of course,
If you can convince the Dutch to let you have Cape Koe.
Which is the other point. And I'd heard quite early from the player Dude, who was playing Congo, lovely guy. And Dude mentioned, the Dutch are going to go for St. Helena here. And I thought, okay, yep, I'm going to get Cape Koe then. That'll be great. It's a terrible deal for the Congolese to make, but I let them make it. And then, I'll talk about something else with it a little bit later. But I was perfectly happy to let the Dutch go for St. Helena in the first year while I picked up Cape Koe. So I certainly wanted to secure this South African colony. Portugal wanted eventually to trade it, and they said, well, we'll trade Sakalava and Mupondo eventually. And I said, yeah, while crossing my fingers the whole time as that happened. But I got on well with Michael early. Michael was not much of a yapper, and as you know, I'm a huge yapper. So I was trying to keep my messages brief and to the point. I've already spoken about the Dutch not going for Köln, which was lovely. And they mentioned early the idea of them having fleets going this way and me being the land power. And I thought, well, I'm not going to ask for Köln, but hopefully I can secure Köln just by saying, well, it's a land dot.
Oh, and that's interesting. Like I mentioned, there was this big plan around an attack on the Polish, although I think I was able to at least persuade people not to expect anything from year one, and then I think everybody sort of, all right, we'll all do it in year two. I went for Narva, as Russia typically does, and Sweden, sort of rubbed me the wrong way, where they were happy to let me have it initially, but wanted me to commit to giving it to them later on, which was like, all right, well, you're sort of picking a fight with me here. I don't know whether you realize that.
Yeah.
It was in exchange for me getting into Riga, but that's only, that's breaking even for me. It's like, you're growing here, I'm breaking even. This is not a fair trade. Of course, the Safavid and Ottoman players, I think, were the ones I saw as like my most competent or my strongest neighbors, where I was curious to see how that dynamic would go. So I was happy to aim for peace with both of them. With the Safavid player, there was a very interesting conversation as to which one of us would get Khiva and which one of us would get Uzjan.
Oh, yes.
It can go in either direction, but I felt Khiva was the one that I really wanted to have myself, because it felt too vulnerable to have the option of a Safavid army that could go up to Bayuli. I also thought that that might put me in a better option to eventually stab the Safavid should I want to. And I put my foot down on that. I think we both wanted Kiva, and I was able to get them to relent. I think I had the better argument without mentioning any stab than they did in the same direction.
You say that one goes to each. I've seen a lot of Safavid players get both in first year, while the Russia goes elsewhere.
True, but those are when you have irresponsible Russians
who attacked Poland year one. Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I was very much hoping to just grab neutrals as best as I could in year one, not looking to make any moves that overcommitted me in any direction. You have so many neighbors as Russia, you don't know whether or not you're going to be stabbed. Like, the odds are high, the more neighbors you have, that one of them stabs you.
Yes.
And there's plenty of places Russia can be stabbed, which I became very self-aware of as soon as I started planning my moves. I had said, okay, I need to make sure that the Poles don't make a run at me, because they very well could, and that would be messy. I need to convince the Ottomans and the Safavids not to combine against me to take Kabardia. I need to convince the Swedes not to put a fleet in the Gulf of Bothnia to try to force Narva, which again, they might want to do. And I need to convince the Safavids and the Mughals not to work together. I need to convince the Mughals and the Ming not to work together. I need to convince the Ming and the Qing not to work together, and so on, right? So Russia is, and I kept on saying this in my void and in my press, Russia felt like a colonial in terms of the sheer quantity of press and good relations you really couldn't neglect. You had to keep up strong relations. But with the disadvantage of, one, not having the sheer size and strength that colonials do, which can sometimes result in advantages on pure scaling. But two, Russia is completely contiguous, which means that if one of your fronts starts to break down, it can have a cascading effect where all of your fronts start to break down, because people see an opportunity and start to work with the person next to them, who starts to work with the person on the other side of them, and so on and so on. Whereas if you're a colonial and you are losing on a front, you can sacrifice and concentrate on other regions. Russia has no such luxury. So yeah, the absolute worst Russia can settle for is a peaceful stalemate somewhere while they focus on other sides.
I think that's a good way to look at it, because in my Qing game, my view was, well, if I don't deal with Russia immediately, they're always going to be there, because they are contiguous like that. They don't really have anywhere else to go. They're always going to come for you eventually.
I mean, Russia doesn't have to expand in all directions per se, but it has to expand in some directions.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not impossible for, I don't think there's maybe one power Russia can never fully get along well with, and we'll talk about that when we enter, I think, year 2.
Yeah. Should we go to moves?
I'm happy to move forward.
Lovely. Excellent. We'll start with your area.
As I mentioned, headed to Narva, headed to Spitsbergen Islands. I was very unsure about what I wanted to do with Moscow, because I was thinking about going for whether I should go to Bakhchisarai with Kharkov and then Moscow heading down to Kabardia, or seizing Kabardia first and then heading to Bakhchisarai with Moscow.
Yeah.
And the worry there was, one, okay, who do I trust more not to bounce me from somewhere? Can I trust the Safavids and the Ottomans? And that felt like a dangerous thing. And I also, by being in Kharkov, I could give the impression that there was always the chance I might just hold Kabardia. And I could move to Bakhchisarai without, however, my greatest concern was not that. It was, if I got stuck in Kharkov, then I would not be able to build there. And it feels like such an important territory to be able to build in. It's a really important keystone supply center for the Russians. And if I'm going for Bakhchisarai, I could go through Voronezh, but if I do that, then I am threatening Kyiv, and I'm potentially pissing off the Poles, and I was not looking to piss off the Poles. Again, trying to keep good relations with everybody, knowing that I might have to react to somebody picking a fight with me, and that would be a lot harder if I had already picked a fight with somebody else. But yeah, so end up moving down, and I did not, and again, this is where the Polish player not pressing a ton and then me not asking every possible question. I could have the Poles. I did not expect them to open to Ochakiev. I thought they would just take Jassy. It's typically very safe, and Ochakiev typically will go to the Ottomans.
Yes.
But the fact that they were in Ochakiev immediately meant that they could theoretically bounce me from Bakhchisaray, which was a bit of a terrifying prospect because not only do I not get my growth, I'm also stuck in Kharkov blocking that key build I was talking about. Astrakhan sometimes sticks around in the Caucasus to make sure that there is no Kabardia attack. However, again, I wanted to make sure I was getting my fair share of this big cluster in Central Asia, so I moved east with it. Turkestan, I think, is only opening Verkorturi pretty much ever does.
Yep.
And then maybe the most interesting, in the Far East, I had 3 options, right? I have Zaysan, Karakorum, and Yakutsk, and only 2 dots. And as we were alluding to earlier, as much as the pre-core in Yakutsk may be interesting because that opens up options and you can build fleets in Siberia, I felt that the central area was far more likely to be contested, that I should go there, and that I was able to convince both Qing and Inuit that, Yakutsk is my dot. Now, I didn't tell them I wasn't going for it immediately, but both of them seemed happy to waive their claims to it initially. So I focused on heading south into Mongolian areas and Central Asian areas as opposed to prioritizing picking up Yakutsk. The other reason for that was because I figured I'm going to want a nice concentration of armies in this area, and if I've got an army off in Yakutsk, it'll be isolated.
Yeah, and Yakutsk is easy to take if you ever build a fleet in Verk and just move it through Laptev Sea. It's a nice way to pick it up and have some pressure around the Inuits as well.
Potentially some foreshadowing there.
Oh,
I don't remember if you
did that or not. So
if I look at how my neighbors opened, I think there were no particular surprises anywhere near me. However, I do remember being grateful for that. Looking, I guess, with that exception of the Polish in Ochakiev that I mentioned.
Yep.
In terms of everything else, I certainly noticed a couple of things, and here's where I think I throw the ball to you.
Yeah, because I think I know which move you're going to notice, and we may as well go straight there. Because, of course, England set up the Illuminati with me and the Netherlands, and they were saying, well, we should be doing, little, spreading rumors, like little stabs and stuff. And as soon as I heard that England had been promising Inuit support into Anticosti, I thought, I'm attacking England. And it was a calculated risk because I had been hearing that there was an NA triple that were potentially looking at me. And England was my source of intel about that. And if I piss off England, that's not going to be good. All of these bounces were arranged. But this move here to Gulf of Maine, I think, is the spiciest move on the board.
Yeah.
And
not your typical opening and not what you want to see as England.
Yeah, because, of course, I don't really see the need of going to Cabot Strait year 1 with this fleet. So I was thinking, well, do I just go through Marguerite Bay out to the North Atlantic Ocean? And then you've got the option of either Placentia Bay or Gulf of Maine if you want to be a little bit spicy. Gulf of Maine is really nice because there's no fleet that can... Well, only Bermuda can bounce it. I'd already been told that Bermuda was going to Braddock it. So I was pretty sure that I was going to be able to get into the Gulf of Maine. And I thought, well, I can just pass this off as as one of these Illuminati things that people don't have to worry about. And I said to England, sorry, I thought I had the order into Marguerite, but I changed it to Gulf of Maine to try and throw a bit of spice because Athapaska was telling me they were worried about an EF. And England said, it's okay, I trust you.
That's awfully generous, and I'm sure you've scarred them into never making that mistake again, because there is no good reason for France to go to Gulf of Maine. And I mean, even for you, there's no clear dot, right? There's no guarantee capture. Your best chance is Bermuda, and therefore, I mean, if I see this as England, I'm pretty sure I know where you're going.
Yeah, I guess the argument is that it's an NAO move because a French fleet in the NAO before year 2 can go to Canary Basin, it can go to Leeward Sea, it can do all sorts of things. So it's often...
Except St. Marguerite Bay exists.
Yes, and can do the exact same thing.
So if I'm England, this is never acceptable.
Yeah.
There's like I said, there is no excuse.
And it wasn't just Gulf of Maine, it was also Antilles Current, which is a nice little hedge.
Yeah. No, yeah, and I noticed that as well. I mean, Antilles Current, I've had friendly Frances do Antilles Current just because Antilles Current, there's nothing you can do about it, and it's so powerful, and even if you bounce it, France is happy. So I can't remember the last time I saw France not go to Antilles Current.
It's a strong move. So I was quite happy to get into Antilles and Gulf of Maine and have England fine with it, which it boggles the mind how that ever happened. But yeah, I guess you play the cards you're dealt, and I got dealt the cards of an England who wanted to run a triple and did not want to attack the Dutch. If there's a triple forming in NA, might not be good news in the long run because I'm pissing off England, but it's a nice setup for a strong Caribbean for me to be in this kind of position. Elsewhere, I think most things go pretty normally. Spain terrorizes Aymara.
You have Spain terrorizing Aymara unnecessarily for Aymara. You also have Spain misordering to Coleridge from...
yeah, I mean, it's a first game thing, but this is a good
new player
misorder to make because otherwise you're not getting both Cartagena and Caracas.
Oh, exactly. So I immediately pressed Spain to tell them that do not despair. You are secretly a genius.
Exactly. And I actually asked them, I said, was that deliberate? Like, did you do that as part of a deal with England or something? Like, to say, I'm not going to go for Jamaica? Like, I don't know. I think it was a genuine mistake, but one that worked out quite well for them.
I did notice Cairo heading towards West Africa as opposed to into the Arabian Peninsula, as I'd hoped to see, just to maybe have a little bit more tension between our Safavid and Ottoman players, but I wasn't, I may have been disappointed, but I wasn't surprised to see that happen. You've got the bounce in Silesia and no bounce in Split for Austria, which
so
I think
Ottomans
poses some challenges.
And the Austrians are out in the Adriatic Sea next to Naples. So
yeah. And then in good news, I guess the bounce in Strait of Hormuz does mean that Safavids should never capture a double here. They're going to be limited to +4.
Yeah, because they never get into Rustaq or Riyadh. Ottomans are coming down for Riyadh.
There's always the possibility of mind control. But
one of the other things here is that I learned pretty quickly that Panda Boy was the odd one out in this area.
Yes, and everybody had heard this, I think, except Panda Boy. Everybody on the map knew what was going to happen in Africa, which was Panda Boy had aggressively pitched everybody against everybody else.
Yep.
And the reaction that happens to people when they do that is typically they're the ones that get attacked because people are suspicious of your aggression, talk to each other. You always have to remember that your opponents are able to talk to each other.
I also got to point out that Abyssinia made the extremely cringe play of not painting Alsa and then moving to Aden. They went out to Jura instead, which is extremely lame.
I haven't played there since there's been that new crossing.
The land bridge, yeah. It's interesting, but it's nice because you can get rid of the Ottoman colour now. Yes, but Adjaran was trying to push me and Portugal to fight, and Adjaran were going to be the odd ones out. So Portugal and I were kind of discussing, like, do we want to join in? Do we want to prop them up? What do we want to do? And we thought, well, let's just leave that for later and figure it out. So
I think from your perspective, joining in always seems great, unless you're worried that Portugal will get too much of it compared to you. Portugal has to weigh the threat of France, or not France, sorry, of Congo.
Well, and also France, but yes, also Congo. So and Congo,
yeah, but they're not worried. If you're talking with France about fighting Adjaran.
Yes, exactly.
You're working with the working assumption that you're getting along with France.
Yeah, and I was getting along well with Portugal at this phase. We can see the Netherlands do in fact go for Madurai. England go for this little maneuver to try and get Rajamahendri and Valari because they are seeding Madurai. They don't have Aceh here. So Netherlands, it's really quite a good buff for them because they get Madurai, Aceh, and Palembang, basically.
I mean, as we're moving towards fall moves, it was pretty uneventful for me in that I knew the moves I would be making. I just didn't know whether or not people would let me have everything I wanted. So I could have been bounced from Narva, but, was promising the Swedes, I would give it to them later while working with them against the Poles. I could have been attacked in Kabardia by the Safavids and the Ottomans, but I think that often doesn't immediately happen because, I don't know, I find often that's just a prelude for one of those two stabbing the other when they initially show that much support. It's almost more stable to have the three-way split. Yeah, so Bakhchisarai didn't need to be bounced by Poland. I was hoping that they wouldn't do that, but couldn't do much about it other than ask them, please, please, please. And then in East Asia, it was interesting because you have a number of possibilities, right? You could see the Mughals and the Ming work together against Zaisan. You could see the Ming and the Qing work together against Karakoram. Not a ton you can do about either of those other than tapping Turfan if it's the Ming who will be supporting. And in either case, if it's supporting one way or the other. So I end up deciding that the best move here is to tap it with both armies, defending each other indirectly against any type of Ming-supported aggression. If the Ming got supported into me, I would be out of luck. But the good news is, I'm relatively certain I'm going to have enough builds that I'll be able to fight back for any lost ground there. And again, as Russia, you're sort of left just hoping that people liked your press, and there's only so much you can do. It's not really mitigating plays.
Yep, and that's where it does come down to people's individual choice and all that. For me, this triangle here is usually the only place in the map that ever has a retreat in year one.
Yeah.
And most games I see someone get knocked out of this triangle. So if you can have a peaceful triangle, that would be a good achievement for you. I think for me, there's not much to chat about until we go to moves, so we may as well just go straight to moves if you're ready. Lovely. Starting with your area again.
Well, really not much to say. I got everything I wanted, and I doubled as Russia, which is not a feat a lot of Russians get to say, so I was very pleased with that.
Where's Kabardia heading here?
Paris.
Ooh.
I don't like holds, so I tend to like to do something funny with my holds.
Yeah.
So in this case, I pointed it at Paris. And I don't know that we even had that much. I guess we must have already been at the stage that you were wondering that I might be spreading things around. But I didn't actually mean it as anything more than a little bit of fun. In retrospect, reading other people's press and voids, there are definitely some new players that thought that this was a big signal to the board.
Exactly, yeah. Which is very funny.
It really wasn't. Like in my head, if I'm going to organize a coalition, it's going to happen through a lot of press. And I don't believe in group chats. Group chats never get anything done. I will be pressing everybody who I want to coalition somebody individually. So people who saw this and thought it meant something without me ever telling them anything about it, I think were maybe a bit quick to jump the gun.
It is very funny. I think the chat that had been going on between us at this stage, or at least my read of it, was that you were worried there that I was going to completely crush England and go for it.
Yeah, well, I guess we could see from the original start that you had the jump on England, but it was too soon to say anything. I too frequently I see if one colonial sort of steps out and is the aggressive one, that often doesn't end well for them. So I wasn't terribly worried at this point. I think very often, an aggressive start by a colonial results in them getting pulled down by the people around them because it's so easy to make that claim of, look how aggressive this person is.
Absolutely, and I think some of that does happen. We'll finish off your area first, so pretty standard.
And this was, of course, the other reason for Khiva. I wanted to be able to support myself into Khiva as opposed to just relying on not being bounced from Uzgen if I was walking into Uzgen.
To backfill, yep.
Yeah, which was some of the earlier negotiations talking about. But yeah, no, again, nothing to say about mine. Everything went smoothly in terms of what I went for. It'll be interesting to look at the rest of the map later, but for now, let's look at what happened in fall for you.
Yeah, and probably I think the headline is that I get into Bermuda and I get into the Bahamas, which it's so good for the French Caribbean position. And it is very risky.
It's not a strong one inherently.
Yeah, you are the one that is making the big move. And it's good because a lot of colonials do want to see who the odd one out is. And if they go, oh, well, England's getting coalition, other people can join in. But until other people join in, there's always the worry that it completely gets turned around and everyone instead attacks you. So It's a bit risky going for these, but the fact that England can't build in either of these cores in year one is absolutely enormous for France if they're attacking England. So that was my read on this was, well, I've been led in here. I have a bizarre level of certainty that England is not covering either of these dots because I knew they were going for Bratachlid. And this is the other part which convinced me to actually go ahead with this stat, was that I was able to get Portugal on board. And I asked Portugal, like, hey, would you like to go for England early? They bounced them out of Bratachlid, and they also bounced them out of Rajamahindra.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely devastating.
Yeah. Of course, I think if I were the Portugal player here and I were a bit more cunning, what I would do would be I'd say to England, France is dotting Bermuda, you need to cover it, and then take Bratachlid.
No, I gotta say, I don't like the decision from Portugal because what are they immediately gaining here? Not really anything.
Yep.
And I mean, especially in India, my goodness, it's you're asking for trouble by immediately fighting with your counterpart. And as you see, they're immediately punished for it.
Yeah, they get knocked out of Hyderabad.
It would not have made a difference in this particular scenario because of the way that England had opened. But yeah, who are you going to ask for help now?
Exactly, yeah. So they're in a bit of a bad position from that. But this was part of, we're going to be best friends in Africa because I'd realised Poland were not going to be my best friend in Africa. I wanted Portugal to be that friend. So it was, let's go after England.
About it because you moved to English Channel despite the Portuguese fleet in Iberian Current.
Yeah. I know a lot of Portugals have not, but I didn't tell Portugal I was going for Channel, but they probably might have assumed it.
From my perspective, looking around the map, I was pretty pleased because what I saw were colonials fighting, which, even if you were getting the upper hand over one, at least it was colonials fighting. I actually preferred what I was seeing to a world where there's no colonial interactions at all, because they tend to sort of precipitate into each other. Once the dam is broken and colonials start fighting each other, they tend to continue to fight each other. What was interesting was seeing, and there was also a number of other aggressive moves that were often offset, which I appreciated. So if you look at the Spanish, they took Tunis here, which was not a classic trade for Naples, because who's in Naples? Oh, it's the Austrians. That's where they found their fourth dot.
Yep. And we were all convinced that Austria was supporting Intersplit. We were like, that's what they're doing. They're just going to get three, but they're going to attack the Ottomans.
Oh, and I mean, I thought that was, I was pretty impressed by that move by the Austrians, actually. Yep. I thought that was well done on their part. Of course, the Poles are going to be knocked back to Jassy, as you'd expected. But, Ottomans off to a bit of a difficult start, given that they they're losing Tunis. They are not capturing anything with their fleet going into Ionian. They're not capturing anything with their army going into Hogar. So a bit of a slow start for our Ottoman player.
Yeah, and it isn't even met by a Spain being super strong in response, because Spain did this dumb shit around Aymara. They backed out of Gulf of Guayaquil. They didn't dot Exura.
Which I think is correct.
But you don't move there in the spring, and Ute gets both Hawaii and Akwala.
But sticking on the Ottomans, to make things even worse, you have Adjuran convoying to Mara.
Yeah,
So that is as hostile as it gets, I think. If you're an Ottoman player, you're never agreeing to this. And
they didn't agree to it. It was part of this whole everyone hates Adjuran thing, was the Ottomans going, they've moved here, they're clearly going to convoy to Mara. They're coming for me. Everyone needs to kill them.
Adjuran successfully built their own coalition here.
Yep. Which was, and he really thought he was cooking. I like Panda a lot. And when he was like, I'm a pioneer. No one's ever done this opening before.
And this was everybody knew it was going to happen. Like, everybody was watching and talking to each other, being like, okay, nobody likes Adjuran. This is going to go very poorly for them.
I think what I said to him was, I'm not sure I'm a believer in this opening, but they doubted Galileo. So, I don't know, prove me wrong.
That's too funny.
Yeah.
And then, we saw that very powerful move by Mughals committing south, which I like to see because I wanted to see Mughals committing south. I didn't want to see the Mughals having too much success, though, which made it very a welcome sight to see that Ming supporting Ayutthaya into Bamo, which one means that Mughals and Ming are not seeing eye to eye, suits me extremely well, and also offsets the success that the Mughals are having elsewhere.
Absolutely, yeah. Mughals do not have a strong opening here.
So overall, I was extremely pleased with how the first year went.
Yeah. Netherlands don't go for Aceh, which I think is really weird. Like, just go there. I assume this was just a placeholder core that they didn't think they could actually call Palembang. But...
Yeah, no, they've played the game long enough. They know they can.
Yeah, absolutely. Netherlands do not go for Cape Coe, which I love to see. And I go for Mapondo because I think that's the easier one to leave alone. So you take Mapondo and then move out of that. Africa, I think all going very standardly here, except, of course, that we get this army down into Hogar. So Ottomans are putting a strong presence into Africa immediately. No one goes near Sao Tome first year. I don't think there are any other huge stabs here. Yeah, so we can look at the clean map before builds. So here's our scoreboard at the end of the first year. And as we can see, Netherlands get their famous year one double, which is more and more common these days, ever since B2. And a lot of people like to point at the Netherlands and say, oh, God, they doubled, they're going to steamroll the game. Netherlands is the weakest colonial, and a double does not mean they are the strongest on the board. I get up to 13, which is really nice, so I only miss out on 1. So I'm very happy with my first year because I was able to get Gulf of Maine to get a dot. In Bermuda, putting me up, I only have to wave in 1 spot. Spain misses out on 3, Portugal misses out on 4, England misses out on 6. England plus 8 is absolutely debilitating for their first year here.
Yes.
And we get Russia here with a nice little plus 8.
And the sort of reactions to this, there's always some press as people are looking around at things. It wasn't actually me at first. It was Safavids. I have my void open here. Safavids reached out to me and said, do you read this as Netherlands, France? They were worried that, they spotted the Netherlands, France and expressed concern about that. I thought that they may have a point. I wasn't convinced of it, of the strength of it entirely. But I was happy to encourage that kind of talk and say, look out for this Netherlands, France. But then you have to be worried about Spain, Portugal, or the potential Spain, Portugal, Netherlands, or the England, France, Netherlands, or the France, Spain, or the France, Spain, Netherlands. Anything involving a lot of letters of colonials, very scary.
And the running joke for all of us colonials was that basically each phase you'd pick a random assortment of letters and start saying that was what was going on.
Played a bit more of an enhancing role, and it was more so like I wasn't pressing people with the lines of, hey, I think this is happening, watch out, they're coming for you. It was more, hey, be concerned, right? If such an alliance were to occur, it would not be in your favor. And I was saying that in all the relevant directions. Just trying to encourage low alliance play. And I felt, alliance play results in fast games, and Russia is not a fast power.
Yes.
So I wanted to see perhaps a chaotic, a very stabby, grindy game play out with a lot of shifting alliances, which I thought would be the environment in which I would have the chance to thrive.
Absolutely. We were all talking to each other as colonials and all pointing out that you were messaging us all the same kind of stuff. So even before year 2, we'd kind of cottoned on to, okay, JPM's trying to get the colonials fighting, which I had played a big part in getting the colonials fighting, but I didn't want to be, kind of singled out for fighting, but I really wanted to see everyone stay on England because no one else, it's me and Portugal have annoyed England. I'm the one getting dots. They're going to be mad with me first and foremost. I have a promise from the Netherlands that they're going to stab England next year. I need them to stay on that. And you were trying to say, oh, it might be a France-Netherlands. And so we're like, no, bad JPM.
Stop reading the board.
Yeah.
No, like you said, Inferno, the Safavid player, actually got the credit for being the first one to call that out, and I just happily jumped on board.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think Athapaska also might have some kind of stake in there because, Athapaska comes in and goes, I'm terrified of an EF. We need to attack France. Oh, France attacked England. Great. Now we can attack France. It was like everything in their mind was predisposed towards, we're killing France no matter what. And I'll convince my neighbors of that no matter what happens. Sorry?
All roads lead to killing France.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, there was nothing I could do to change Athapaska's mind about this.
No. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
It must have been frustrating for you.
Yeah, a little bit, but yeah.
Were you very aware of that at the time, or was it well hidden? Did you think you still had a shot of working with Athapaska, or had you realized that they were committed against you no matter what?
I was very much trying to get Inuits on side against Athapaska, and looking at that, I was pretty certain that that Athapaska and England would work together, and I got that impression from England, who just said, yeah, well, now I'm going to go to Athapaska and get them to kill you. So
on my side, not only did I get my double, and it's funny, in my head I keep on thinking I went plus 10 because Russia used to start with 10 centers, but no, I think it's much better now that it only has 8. So that's a more reasonable VSCC as well. But not only did I get everything I wanted, a lot of my neighbors were fighting each other, right? So we mentioned that the Mughals were fighting or attacked by the Ming and the Ayutthaya. I also knew that Safavids was planning on attacking Mughals. Ming was attacked by, or was in conflict with the Mughals, and I was also hearing that the Qing and Tokugawa were aligning against the Ming. Okay. And Qing was being attacked by or would be engaged in fighting the Ming, but also clearly looking down the barrel of an attack from the Inuit in the north. And then, of course, Poland, as previously mentioned, had a coalition with the Ottomans, the Austrians, and the Swedes. And then the Austrians and the Ottomans and the Spanish had what I described as a bit of an awkward Mexican standoff. They were not getting along well, but not fully committed against each other. Like each one sort of hitting the other. The Spanish took an Ottoman dot. The Ottomans took didn't take an Austrian dot, but they very much limited Austrian growth. And then the Austrians took a Spanish dot. So that was a bit of a weird circle.
Yeah, I was extremely glad to see the Austrians dot Spain. Partly I was sad that they got to double because I was thinking Austria's going to go +3. I'm going to be able to march on them, yada, yada. But as soon as they dotted Spain, I knew that there was no way Spain was attacking me. I was like, okay, so Spain and I are locked in the Mediterranean. They're fighting the Ottomans. Austria attack them. Spain need me as their number one. So it was really good for me to see that dynamic take place. The coalition on Poland, which you mentioned, I'd been keyed into that very early
Hold on, I thought that this was going to play out France-Spain. I thought you guys were going to be locking in a very strong alliance.
Because of the whole Ottoman-Austria thing.
Well, in part, like that was where I read the board going towards. There was, I guess, some benefit from Netherlands, France, but I believed in that less than I did in the France-Spain. Yeah,
and my counter to anyone asking me if it was FNS was, well, why did Portugal help me attack England? And I guess the answer to that is, why did they? What are they getting out of it?
And then, of course, there was also an argument of maybe there's a Spain-Netherlands, in which case France is the one potentially in trouble.
Of course, yeah. Anyone could be the odd one out. With this Poland coalition, it had been told to be early by Sweden, because Sweden didn't want me to attack Austria. Sweden said, well, please, can you wait on attacking Austria, because we're going to start coalitioning Poland. And I was like, okay, yep, sure, fine. Clearly the two of them are in cahoots. And I start saying to Sweden, well, in that case, would you like to help me attack England? And Sweden said, well, actually, can you hold off on attacking England for a little bit? Because I want to start this attack on Poland first. I'm thinking, you're not helping me here at all, Sweden. So I just attacked England anyway and said to Sweden, it's already happening. It's been planned well before. Get on board if you want, or don't if you don't. I don't mind. So,
well, if we move to builds then, the Swedish player again, was fully committed against Poland, but he was also actually talking about going anti-English, which I was keen to point out to the English, but suited me fine. And it also resulted, and this totally changed my plans, it resulted in the Swedish player saying that they were eager to make a show of support and to go all in against Poland and setting up for eventual control of the Atlantic by building only fleets. I hadn't anticipated having an opening to war Sweden immediately, but that sort of pricked my ears up. It's like, okay, only fleets, that kind of works for me, because means you're not coming my way, and that's pretty brilliant. Now, it doesn't mean I need to attack Sweden, but it does mean that I'll have ample opportunity to push aggressively elsewhere because I'm not worried about an attack coming from Scandinavia. And then it got better, because I was talking with Sweden about how they wanted to go after the Polish, and they again were, suggesting I get a dot here, and Ottomans get 2 dots here, and Austrians get 2 dots here, and not mentioning too loudly that they get the rest. So I'm, again, not super convinced by this coalition against Poland and how well it would benefit me. But they also said, well, to really be able to push Poland, you should get as many armies as you can. Would you be willing to build Army Archangelsk?
Oh my God.
And I was thinking, well, wasn't my plan. It's usually nice to have a second fleet, but I'm probably fine up in the north for the time being. And if I've got an Army Archangelsk and nothing but fleets in Sweden...
Yeah, I mean...
Well, there's a lot of potential here to take advantage of the Swedish position. And then the nail in the coffin, of course, was once builds came in, they pitched out a move order that was quite unorthodox, because, again, remember, they wanted to take Narva and have me go into Riga. So they pitched a move where they took their one and only army from Turku and put it into Pskov in order to support me into Riga while they would backfill Narva with a fleet. But that unorthodox approach that they, again, were sharing with me totally openly allowed me to plot a counter plan that could be pretty effective.
Yeah, you got to take those opportunities when they come.
No, exactly. And this is not one that I can get much credit for orchestrating beyond just being a willing participant in the so-called, eager participant going against Poland. But no, they were a bit, I think, too eagerly thinking about their opportunities without thinking about how others might be able to exploit those. So again, as we've been discussing, we'll see full fleets by Sweden and an army in Archangelsk, which again felt pretty unorthodox and something I would never want to do, because I would have thought Sweden will see this as a declaration of war, which I did not want to do. Again, not looking to telegraph my moves or pick fights before I know who else might be coming after me. But I had their blessing to do this, so we'll see how that works out for them. At the same time, Safavids, being just as clever a player as I thought they were, wanted to build a fleet and insisted we both build fleets and bounds in Caspian Sea instead of any pretenses of trusting each other's word, which is definitely the intelligent thing to do. I was a little bit annoyed by that, but I had no good argument against it, so I wasn't going to. And similarly, as much as I think a fleet Kharkov is incredibly powerful, I would see that as an immediate telegraphed declaration of war against the Ottomans. So I stuck to an army there, and I just insisted that the Ottomans not build fleets in Trebizond or Constantinople.
Yeah. Of course, the Ottomans only went +7 in that first year, so they don't get a lot of builds.
And then what you'll see in Verk, the last build of consequence to mention for me, I put a fleet in order to go after Yakutsk. There was a temptation to build an army there because the immediate move into Turkestan can create a lot of pressure. But again, I realized that's something that the Safavid player would immediately recognize as a potential threat. This was a very, very clever Safavid player who was saying all the right things, right? Saying, I'm happy to keep peace in Caucasus. I'm happy to work with you against the Mughals and to invest in fleets. So, I wasn't going to rush into ruining a good relationship. So I was happy to build that fleet, especially because I was less trusting of the Qing and the Inuit letting me keep Yakutsk. So I went with that fleet. And that's, I think, it for builds on my end.
Excellent. Yeah, what did the Inuits do? Yeah, so they went East Coast, okay. Yeah, because
which I
Kerrick's West
was
Coast.
a little shocked by because you're giving away Sea of Okhotsk to the Qing.
Yeah, you can't do anything about it. And particularly if you hear, I don't know if Inuits were hearing that Qing and Toku were going to attack Ming. Qing and Toku can just as easily attack Inuits. So.
Well, and I mean, if I'm them and I'm looking to build an alliance, the alliance is built on the assumption of we're doing both.
Yeah. So I got 13. I only had to drop 1, and I had all of my cores open. So it was about using that wave to get a concession from someone. And the place I ended up dropping my wave was in Fort Dauphin. And in return for that, I was able to secure no build in Delagoa, because you really don't want a build in Delagoa. Cape Koei is not a natural French dot, but with the Dutch not going for it, and me and Mapondo, I wanted to secure Cape Koei. And Portugal had no interest in going for Cape Koei early, so they were happy to wave in Delagoa as long as I waved down here. I know Panda Boy was furious about this. They were going off at Portugal saying, how could you let the French dupe you like this and everything? And Portugal just said, well, they're waving for
curiosity, did Portugal explain why they had no interest in the southern end of Africa?
I don't know, because, we originally had this deal and
they're just leaving real estate on the table.
Yeah, I think the idea was because I'd been so good about Uulata that they were happy to, I wasn't saying, oh, well, I need to get Uulata this year. I was saying, no, this area is yours.
So Uulata was the deciding factor there.
Yeah, I think so.
There were no other promises of, I will support you elsewhere in exchange for you letting me have South Africa.
Well, there was a promise of support that happened this year that was not me offering something to Portugal. We'll get to that when we get to the move. But this order of builds was a bit odd to me. I would have expected to see Army, Moravi, Fleet Beira.
Yeah, that is for sure.
And I think because I asked, shouldn't it be the other way around? And I'm happy because it means there's no fleet coming to Mozambique Channel. Not that it can do much to me immediately, but
you know what it must have been? It's a natural consequence of not building Delagoa because it leaves Delagoa exposed. So they want to order to Mutapa, which makes more sense for an army than a fleet, in order to be able to cover Delagoa in a pinch if they need to.
But Moravi,
because if you build the usual army Moravi and fleet Beira, then usually that fleet is going to Comoros Sea, and you're just generally moving north against Adran. I'm guessing that must have been it.
Yeah, I think it was some kind of deal with Adran they made where they decided to build in this order. But Congo's building 3 armies, so I would have wanted an army in Moravi personally. I don't know. There's no fleet from the Netherlands here, which is interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. So clearly there's a deal here of Netherlands and Congo working together, where the Netherlands are ceding Sao Tome in exchange for some type of peace between these two neighbors.
So I can tell you exactly what happened here, which is that as soon as the Netherlands were in St. Helena and Congo realized Cape Koei was open, Congo came to me and said, hey, can I get Cape Koei? And I said, no, I don't think so. And they said, well, I mean, I'm missing out on a dot because of this deal with St. Helena. And I said, well, you're getting Sao Tome, right? And they were like, no, we haven't agreed anything about Sao Tome. And I said, well, if they're getting St. Helena, you should be getting Sao Tome. You need to stand up for yourself. You can't let this injustice stand.
I would never have believed that, I feel like I would have been like, sure, you don't have a deal with the Dutch. Clearly you do.
I just got the read that this was the case. And Congo then said, okay, I just went to the Dutch. Thank you for pushing me to do this because I've secured Sao Tome. And I'm like, I just care about getting Cape Koei. I don't give a shit what happens with Sao Tome.
At the end of the day, you're guaranteed Cape Koei, right? Like the Dutch can't, or the Congolese can't do anything about it. So
yeah, exactly. So I'm just saying no.
You're able to comfortably say no without risking much.
Yep. I chuck a whole bunch of builds down here. We get a fleet in Boston, so clearly England is planning to start defending the oceans as well, which is a bit sad. Yeah, that was one of the other things. I was sad that both Falmouth and Boston were open for builds, and the fact that I'm stabbing in Fall means that I'm going to get builds that are anti-me.
Which was well played by the English player.
Yeah, absolutely. It's risky because I'm in Gulf of Maine, and I technically could be going for either Falmouth or Boston last turn. But, yeah.
I still think that they probably should build an army because Well, I mean, I guess they didn't know for sure you'd build a fleet in Port Royal, but point being, they're not going to be able to bounce you.
Yeah. We see no fleets from Athapaska, which I was sad about. I wanted to start pushing Athapaska towards Inuits. My read on this at this point was that me and Inuits were going to fight Athapaska. And so I was building accordingly to try and set this all up. I'd be defending against England. I'd be pushing Inuits into Athapaska in return for leaving me alone. And we'll see how that goes. Europe, yeah, the fact that I'm in English Channel means I managed to get this other fleet out, and I managed to convince the Dutch to build this fleet in Amsterdam, which is great because I think the way they sold it to England was, well, you're building a lot of fleets here to defend against France, so I need a fleet out as well. Of course, for me, I'm wanting Netherlands to follow through on their promise and attack England. So I was very, very keen to get them getting this fleet out. An unfortunate thing happened here, which was I had hoped that the whole Netherlands Ocean, France land thing would mean I would get Köln. And then Banana came to me and said, okay, so I'm taking Köln this turn. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like, we'd never asked about it. I was trying to be cheeky about it to see if I could secure it. But they said I need to take Köln this year. I'm sorry. It's right next to two of my home dots. It's very important for me. And what I said to them was, well, I want to attack Austria. Is it possible for me to move Luxembourg through Köln to Hesse this year as my way to enter Köln? So we'll see whether that comes off. But oh yeah, there was this the wave in Barcelona was a in return for no fleet in Marseille was essentially the trade there. And I was happy to go no fleet in Marseille because I need armies to go towards Florence. Because Austria will probably go for Florence here. Even though technically Austria and I are not fighting yet, I want an army to come towards Florence.
Spain mostly, and you perhaps to a secondary level, were not thrilled at seeing no build in Sarajevo and a bunch of fleets in the Mediterranean. This clearly sort of indicates a potential alignment between the Austrian and Ottoman player.
Yeah, I didn't love nothing in Sarajevo. I thought Army Constantinople was useless. I guess if you want, Targoviste to be poking this way and have an army that could support Ochakiv, sure.
Or not to piss off the Russian player who specifically told you don't build Constantinople. But yeah, at that point, build it in Sarajevo.
Yeah, what do you think is going to happen here? So this whole area was a mess, basically, for the whole game, as I think you know. But yeah, should we go to moves, or is there anything you want to talk about before moves?
Well, I can briefly talk about what I had in mind for moves. Like I said, my understanding was that the Ming and Qing were about to go to war, that the Safavids were about to invade the Mughals. So my planning was, I don't want to, I'm still in a stage of not wanting to rock the boat too much because I don't know whether somebody's coming up against me, but I've got a great plan to infiltrate the Swedes. So I'm committing to that. I am going to take advantage of the Safavids wanting to work with me against the Mughals because the only real dot I would ever want out of that is Yarkand. So I ask for Yarkand and I get promises of support from both the Ming and the Safavids. The Ming were very understandably uncomfortable with Turfan being as isolated as it was, but I was happy to sort of say, listen, hey, you've got a lot of things you can help me with. I'm happy to leave you with that. Maybe eventually it will make more sense and just be better peace of mind for me to take it. But, we don't need to do that soon. And if we ever do that, we can certainly compensate you with dots elsewhere. So the plan was to support the Ming player into Gobi. I was again feeling very strong about my alliance with Ming and say, listen, I'm willing to put myself into peril by putting you into Gobi, which potentially threatens Karakoram, but with the idea of then further supporting you to Orgu.
Lanzhou to Gobi.
Yes, Lanzhou to Gobi.
Yeah.
So because Turfan is supporting me to Yarkand.
Yep.
And then I support Lanzhou to Gobi with the idea of then supporting it to Orgu in the fall. And I'm hopefully orchestrating Qing and Inuit to bump heads a bunch while I peacefully pick up Yakutsk was the dream there.
Yep.
Finally, the last thing I guess I should say is in the Caucasus, I was very unsure what to do with Kharkov. I'd love to move Kharkov a little bit to the west, maybe, move into, I made a bunch of DMZs with the Polish player, but not included in the DMZ was Zaporozhye. And I was thinking, okay, maybe I can move to Zaporozhye with Bakhchisaray and backfill with Kharkov. But I was still so nervous about this Ottoman Safavid situation that I opted thinking I should support Kabardia Hold instead, just to show them that I'm willing to defend myself and won't be caught by unawares. We'll see how much of what I wanted to happen actually happens. I don't know, do you want to talk about your intentions before we see the actual moves, or just want to see them up?
I think probably I've covered most of my stuff. I think the important things to cover that I'm looking for here is working with Inuits. I think I'll have to see the move to remember exactly what it was, but I think Inuits and I were going to do some level of walking towards Athabasca and attacking them. And I also really wanted to see the Netherlands stab England, and I wanted to see the Portuguese still going on England, and I wanted to see Spain stab England. This was all basically set up, and everyone was throwing all sorts of letters at me. The one alliance I technically had locked in was the FPS, but I was also working very closely with Netherlands, so I was just keen to get people hitting England and see what I could get out of it. So, yeah.
You're saying I said all the letters and I was right?
Well, because you were saying like, oh no, it's an ESN to Portugal and stuff. And it's like, no, like, the other colonials don't need to worry about this. I'm working with all of them, and then we'll see what's happening. Like,
I think I made a joke in my chat about ESPN.
Yeah, the classic. Let's go to moves and have a look. So we'll start by looking, as always, at Russia. Yeah. Oh my god.
Don't tell people your full plans if you don't need to.
Yep.
And be mindful of how they may be able to take advantage of them. And there were a number of ways I could follow up on this, but either way, I was guaranteed at least one, potentially two.
Yeah, because Ume is vulnerable because Stockholm moves out.
Mm-hmm.
Pskov is not next to Umeå at all. This is completely killer.
It could technically break even if they got into Narva and defended Umeå, but that would be a bit of a challenge. And so we'll talk through the different permutations of how I thought I might follow up on this later. But yeah, pretty devastating attack on the Swedes here. Nothing eventful happened anywhere in Central Asia. My attack on Yarkand went as planned. The support into Gobi went as planned. But if we look a little bit to the east, well, that's a Qing full sending against me. Now, luckily, I managed to bounce 2 units with one by going to Buryatia, which is why I went. I always sort of figured, okay, there's a decent chance I'll be in trouble here. But suddenly, Karakoram looks awfully tender because it has 2 Ming units and 2 Qing units touching it. So that's a lot of units around Karakoram. But I'm hopeful that Ming's on my side here. They did just support me, and I'm happy to return the favor. So surely they'll want to take that. And then in Yakutsk, well, that one I'm feeling a little bit less enthusiastic about because both the Qing and the Inuit said they wouldn't go for it, and both are headed there. Now, I've got my fleet, even though I got bounced from Buryatia, I have my fleet, and now I'm feeling very grateful for having built my fleet, but I'm a little bit worried, okay, if they both lied to me, was this coordinated?
Yeah.
There seems like there's a good chance that, they look like they're going after Tokugawa together, they're probably also going after me together.
Yeah, there's nothing in the Sea of Okhotsk, so they've managed to sort out their stuff. And we see Qing supporting Ming into Busan as well.
And Ming supporting themselves in as well, which meant, they didn't need that support from the Qing. But I'm not too concerned that this means Ming and Qing are working together because, this is just purely self-interested from the Ming player. They haven't given Qing anything, so I'm not too worried about it.
And we see Ming stab Portugal.
Ming stabs Portugal, which, it's not crazy stuff. And then some miscommunication here, right? Because I'm not sure why Ayutthaya are walking out of this. I never actually tracked down what had happened here. Like, it looks like the Ming-Ayu alliance is still on, but that somebody changed their mind and didn't tell the other player what they were doing.
Yeah.
But the spring, pretty smooth, all things told.
Looking good for you.
And I just see as well see the Safavid invasion of Mughals, one, means half of it aren't coming from me, but two, it meant that I'm able to turn to the Mughals and say, hey, listen, I've taken Yarkand. It touched a lot of my dots, and it touches more dots that I will want to go for. It's always going to be tender up here by itself. Cut your losses. Let me have Yarkand, and I'm happy to not push you any further. There's a pretty clear-cut border between Yarkand and Kabul. It's just one SC touching one SC. We can leave it there. You've got bigger problems. Look, you've got Ming and Ayu still working together. You've got England and Portugal working together. You've got a full-blown Safavid invasion. Let me have Yarkand, and we can forget about any of this. So that was my pitch there, and it was genuine, because I saw Yarkand as a very important territory for me, but not really anything beyond that from the Mughals. Yep. So it's how you convince somebody to, let you have a dot of theirs, but not see it as a stab, and not see it as something continuing. We'll see how effective I was in making that argument.
And the best way to do that is have everyone else help you attack them, so that you're not the one bad guy.
I got the dot here, but I'm not the one bad guy. Everybody, all of Mughals' neighbors at this point are fighting them. Honestly, I think even if I'm the only one who's sort of taken a dot here, well, I guess in the south there was Hyderabad. I'm far from the existential threat.
Yeah. And here we start seeing the stuff that made me want to stop playing the game. I mean, Inuits.
The stuff that you held me responsible for, which made me feel really hard done by.
But of course,
I didn't coordinate any of this, and you were complaining incredibly bitterly when I think the lowest you ever actually fall is 5th on the scoreboard.
Yeah, it's a little while later that happens. So for this one in particular, I believe you were to some level encouraging this Athabasca Inuit fighting, but what I didn't know was the level.
Well, I was encouraging Athabasca and Inuit to fight each other. No, I wanted Athabasca and Inuit to fight each other, because remember, my primary objective in North America is weakening Inuit.
Yeah, of course, which is what I was trying to say to you, is like, well, no, we need to worry about Athabasca because they're the next ones. They'll come for you right after Inuit.
I don't care about any of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I'd seen some press between you and Spain about this matter, and I didn't have any idea at the time that Spain was trying to encourage everyone to kill me in North America, because at this point I thought Spain's my ally, we're locked in, we're all good. JK played a very
you were happy to believe it was my fault and not Spain's.
Well, but I've seen press between you and Spain where Spain goes to you and says, well, no, we need France to get attacked in North America. And then you say, well, I'll see what I can do. And then there's press between you and Athabasca where you encourage them to attack me. So, I don't know. I have found it post-game.
No, there wasn't nothing there. But yeah, I wasn't pleased to see that they were working with the Inuit.
Okay.
I was hoping that they would first sort of go after the Inuit and then maybe contain you, but they ended up going for you far more directly than I ever anticipated, and even getting you to join in on the fun, which again, like really, really aggressive play. There are a couple of other elements where I convinced the English to work well with the indigenous North American powers against you, because they were sort of being demanding, and I'm like, listen, man, like, you need the help and you're in no position to be setting terms. Like, just help. Don't get picky with it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that certainly wasn't helpful to you, but
so with Ute, I basically told them Cherokee's yours. I've got bigger fish to fry. So I didn't see this as Ute stabbing me at all.
Yeah.
Coming down for Cherokee.
Well, especially with Spain full sending north just as well.
Yeah, and Ute stabbed Spain while Spain stabbed Ute.
Better version of that.
Yeah, it's very...
A story as old as time. Spain and Ute stab each other, yeah.
Yep. And Spain walks into Catawba. So this is the thing, is that the Netherlands do indeed stab England. Supporting me into Oneida here, they go for Jamestown, Spain go for Catawba. So I've been able to get the coalition happening. I've been able to get all these colonials against England. We see Spain walk into Baracoa. We see the Netherlands take Guadeloupe. We see Spain come up towards Jamaica. So it's all happening. This is what I want to see. This is not at all what I want to see. Inuit stabbing me completely caught me off guard. Athabasca, as we see, do stab Inuits.
Mm-hmm.
So, and very important to note that Inuits are stabbed by Athabasca here in spring before the fall. Foreshadowing for fall. But yeah, Inuits are supporting them down, so I don't get into Algonquin, which is annoying because that's a really nice defensive territory for me. England get up into Estuary because I went for this Tadoussac down to Quebec play because I just decided to trust Inuits and focus on this area here. So it's not looking great. I do get into the Gulf of Maine, which is really nice. I get a lot of pressure on the English area. This is just not good.
No. And especially, like clearly you've been caught blindsided. You're moving away from your defense.
Yep, absolutely. And in my mind, I was like, well, Athabasca is just controlling everyone on the continent. Nothing I do is going to matter here. So, and here we see some more bullshit, which is Poland stabbed me for no reason. They coming into Fulani here and attack on Nantakarou. Apparently, England convinced them to do this, which I found quite funny because Poland gained nothing. And again, Poland did not press me much. And I say they stabbed me for no reason, but Portugal and I had already planned to take Jacob Fort. So this is what this move to the Gambia is about: is that Portugal's going to support me into Jacob Fort in the fall.
It's also interesting because the English players aren't particularly gaining much from that immediately.
Well, they just want people hitting me.
They just want pressure on you.
Guy. Yeah. In England's mind, I'm the only one attacking them.
And Portugal is being very dutiful in going after the English for you together with the Dutch.
Very nice. England also support Portugal out to Guiana Current to attack me. And Spain walk into New Cool.
Which costs them a lot.
It was very funny. And I just went to Poland and I'm like, so this is the dumbest stab of all time, right? Like, it's a -1 stab that you're going to get 0 dots out of. And me 18 guy was like instantly, we're piecing. It's fine. I've been duped.
I wasn't paying too much attention here, but looking at it, seems like Spain attacked almost everyone in the Americas. You know, they're fighting with the Shoshone. They're going after the English, they're going after the Aymara, they're going after the Polish.
Yeah, so they pieced out Aymara, they moved away, and then they go straight back in on Aymara again. It's very
I think it was around here. Like, I wasn't actually, like, I think in my void, what I was most concerned about in terms of colonial alliances around now is, it's an SN.
Yes, and you did impress. Go on about the SN. Yeah,
if there's one thing I can do impress, it's go on.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's looking really nice for me basically everywhere except North America. So I don't get out into Guiana Current, which is a bit sad because I wanted to start attacking England, but it's fine. We get into good position against the Polish here, and Poland, having been dotted in New Coolland, came to me groveling and were like, I'm going to back out of Fulani. It's okay. Can we please peace? And I say yes, knowing full well that I'm taking Jacob Fort in the fall. So it's a hard time for them because I'm next to Jenne here, and I don't know. We managed to get Portugal into Rockall Rise to keep attacking England. So despite what it may have appeared like in India, where England were helping Portugal, Portugal is still attacking England. Don't worry about that.
Portugal are just happy to accept support from England and then betray them immediately anyways.
Exactly. And
like I said, that was what I figured Ming and Qing are doing, right? It's self-interested, so whatever.
I managed to get support into Köln from the Netherlands, which is always nice to see, despite...
Were these attempts at support, like, were these arranged bounces with Austria, or what was going on there?
No, I was attacking Austria, and Austria were reading it and defending against it.
Austria seems to be going in every direction except against Ottomans.
Yeah, and the misplay that me and Spain made here, and I realized it afterwards, I should have told Spain to bounce Florence to knock Austria out, because I was thinking, I'll come in and I'll contain it. But suddenly, as soon as Austria's in Venice and Florence here, taking Florence suddenly gets a whole lot harder with the three of us here. So it's good moves by Austria this phase. Them not letting me get to Stuttgart is really nice. They stopped me getting out of Paris and everything. But I do manage to get into Bern, so I get a little bit of a front on them. I'm forcing them to defend in the fall.
No, I think it's very classic diplomacy player in that they overestimate the amount of balance in the game. It's like, you've got great tactics, but you're not going to win a 1v1 against the French here. And you're definitely not going to be able to go against all your neighbors.
When Poland is attacking them. So, and that's the thing. When you start coalitioning Poland early, and then suddenly Poland aren't doing too bad because Sweden crumbles, and the Netherlands start helping Poland against Sweden. Did you encourage that?
That was me, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. What I kind of learnt this game was not to second guess all this stuff. I just went, it's probably JPM. Like, we're probably fine.
I mean, as you say, it was a bit of a conundrum for me because on the one hand, okay, I've got this opportunity to go after Sweden. I'm convincing Ottomans not to go against Poland because I don't want them to be a soft target for Sweden. At the same time, I'm kind of conscious I'm bailing Poland out, and they're my immediate neighbor, right? Like this may not actually be the outcome I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So I was examining the map very carefully, and the good news was, as we saw, no small part thanks to you and Spain, I guess, their colonies are not going anywhere. So they didn't seem to be growing. So for now, I felt confident with it.
Yeah, it was nice for us that Poland's colonies started doing badly, I think. All fairly standard here. There's a bounce in Seychelles Sea, so no one's coming from me. Portugal not coming.
The move to Mutapa that I expected.
Yeah, exactly. That was pretty much always going to happen, particularly with no Delagoa. I get out into the Indian Ocean, and I've got so many options from the Indian Ocean here, so it's just a great place to be. There's the option for Seychelles, and then there's a couple of Dutch dots here. But I'm friends with the Dutch, so why would I ever go for those dots? And Panda quite reasonably gets pretty worried that I'm going to try and dot Seychelles. But I'm like, no, I'm just going for position. I've got a whole lot of areas around here I need to watch out for.
So the Adjaran did not see you as hostile yet. They sort of saw you as neutral, more neutral than they'd like because you're not picking a fight with the Portuguese, but not necessarily a foe.
When they saw me wave for Dauphin, they got a bit worried because they were like, oh, is this an FP? And people were talking letters across the map, as people always do with colonials. But I wanted to get Congo and everyone fighting in this area. I just wanted to get this happening. But the Dutch stabbed Congo.
Yeah.
And
that doesn't actually surprise me, knowing the player.
Yeah. And the other thing to note here, and it's more of a kind of a large board thing, and I don't have a scoreboard to show it, but everyone's reaction to this phase was, holy shit, the Dutch are just going to romp this home. Like, the Dutch were going to be going up like 9 or 10 this year, I think, from how much they were getting.
Well, not everyone. Definitely wasn't my read of the situation.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, the Dutch are such a hard power to play. They're incredibly fragile. It's really a power that I think you need to evaluate much more carefully by looking at their position and how solid it appears as opposed to just the numbers, because it's easy to gain, but it's also easy to fall apart.
And this led into some of the real shenanigans which started before next moves, which was, and you were...
Yes, this was potentially something that motivated you, was looking at, okay, do I need to balance of power with the Dutch player?
Yeah. And you were part of this in that you were telling a lot of people about the SN and how worried you were about it.
Well, actually, this is the thing. Like, I thought Spain might be the greater threat in that longer down the run.
Yeah. But you encouraged me to peace with England.
Yeah, to counter the SN. That's right. Yeah. I'd forgotten that.
And I believe, was you encouraging the English genuine as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, because my read on it, I was thinking about doing this anyway. Because I looked at this, Inuits had stabbed me, and I thought, shit, I need to peace out with someone.
Either of you dying outright doesn't help me, right? Again, my goal in all of this is to keep a constant wheel of stabs and mucking about where all the colonials are not getting anywhere particularly fast.
Yes.
And
that is why we created the group chat. Because we had all twigged onto, he doesn't care who's doing well, he just wants us all fighting. And so no one had created a colonialist chat. Yeah. And this, well, we want to grow, I want to grow. I think I said to you, I was like, I don't want a cross-board person to continually be undermining me whenever I get good. I want to get good. In
this case, I was trying to help you. I was talking people into making peace with you.
Yeah, but as soon as I start doing well,
you were no longer the one ahead.
Yes.
True, but that's your problem when you're doing well.
Yeah, exactly.
And even then, I think it was actually this year two, where, at the end of the fall, and I'm getting ahead of myself here, but at the end of the fall, I started saying, this is great. You've got so much conflict between colonials. And one of my spectators point out, sure, but collectively they've gotten plus 17. It's like, yeah, Yeah, it's colonials are quite the beast. You know, there's very much two tiers of powers in this game, and you have to be aware that you're entering a game where the powers are not equal. The VSCC does not make up for the inherent strength differences. You need to be intentional and mindful about that.
100%. Yeah, so I wanted to piece out England here because of Inuits, and I was like, oh, okay, well, Athabasca and Inuits. I realized at this point it doesn't matter that Athabasca stabbed Inuits. I cannot trust Inuits. Like, they're doing dumb shit every phase, and England clearly is
with honesty and more reliability, maybe.
Yeah. So I thought that England was the one I could get, particularly because Netherlands, Spain, Portugal have all just stabbed England. So I thought, well, maybe I can be the one that they can rely on.
Exactly. You're not the only asshole, so you can point the finger.
Exactly. So this was the intention coming into this phase, was that I was going to peace with the English, and it was part of a larger board-wide conspiracy that involved Congo a lot. And because Congo had just been stabbed by the Dutch, and Congo was trying to get anything anti-Dutch they could on the board at all. And so they started talking to basically everyone on the map, trying to get them to attack the Dutch. And I kind of took that and ran with it, not least because it looked like the Dutch were going to have an absolutely massive year. And I wanted to keep Cologne. So I thought, well, maybe it's the right time to stab the Dutch.
Invitation got lost in the snowy mail.
Yeah.
That or rest doesn't border any colonials, so.
Are we good to go to moves, or do you want to chat about intention?
Well, let's talk just a little bit here about intention. Two things I want to point out. Obviously, the thing that had been identified earlier as a problem was the Qing and Inuit going against my wishes, and instead of fighting each other, appearing to coordinate against me. So certainly concerned about that, but stay right where you are, because in Sweden, this is a good problem to have. I had some really interesting discussions trying to figure out what was the best way to maximize my chances of doing well here. And so there were two main options I was considering. One, do I assume that Sweden has a number of defenses? They can either, and the big key, and that will continue to be an issue for the entire game, I don't have any fleet presence in the Baltic Sea. So any fleets in that area will never be interrupted. Their support will always be dependable. So, Gulf of Bothnia here can support Pskov to Narva. It can support Pskov to Turku, or it can try to cover Umeå while Pskov taps either Turku or Narva. Those are the sort of three permutations I'm dealing with. And I have options to beat all of them. I just need to try to figure out which one I think is going to happen. And keep in mind, I've got Poland on my side here. So I think that they are going to go to Narva with support. My plan was to ask the Polish to support me from Turku back down into Narva to bounce that, while either going for Umeå, or I could actually use Kola and Karelia to support into Turku in order to defeat any Pskov, Gulf of Bothnia being supported into there. But that doesn't really work if I'm moving out into Narva, because then the dot stays blue, right? And I can tap Pskov. The other option is if I just forget about Narva and try to take Umeå, so I can support myself to Umeå while making sure Turku is defended. And I actually suggested to Poland that they might want to walk into Narva, hoping that maybe they just luckily bounce the Swedes, and if they walk in, well, at least it's not the Swedes who are getting there. Some interesting permutations on how to best take advantage of this. And again, if I'm able to ensure that the Swedes do not grow, it's absolutely huge, because remember, they built no armies. The only army they have is stranded behind enemy lines in Pskov, and is going to be a target for a disband. And there is a landlocked tile in the center of Scandinavia called Jämtland. And Jämtland cannot be it's not coastal, it's absolutely landlocked. And so if they have no armies, I can freely go there at will. It borders 4 of their centers, so essentially it's their long-term demise. If I control Jumpland, I have all of Scandinavia. It's just mine to take at my pace. So I ended up, I think, favoring an approach trying to get into Umeå with an eye to then following that up with a walking into Jumpland. In that big treaty to the Mughals was saying, happy to not continue to work against you, and also like you should never, please never retreat forward here.
Yeah.
Don't think that they would.
I think I have the.
You could see the Ming or the Safavids pitching them on doing so, and I think in fact the Safavids said they did pitch them on doing so.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Or the Ming did, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's have a look at moves then. Let's see. You get into Umeå,
but they do get into Narva.
Yeah.
So that lets me backfill Pskov. So again, this army is very isolated.
Yes, they're kind of in the middle of nowhere. So, and they wouldn't have got into Turku. So they've played it about as well as they could, I guess.
Yep,
but
totally.
I mean, moral of the story: build an army.
I think I would have been more upset if they tapped Turku and then covered Umeå. So I get Turku and I lose Narva to the Polish.
Yeah. Yes, of course.
But no, it was pretty good.
Yep. Had you given Poland permission to go for Narva?
Yeah. So remember that was as part of that plan. The suggestion was Poland goes to Narva, hoping that maybe it bounces an attempt to grab it from Sweden, because at worst then, well, maybe Poland walks in. At least it's not Sweden who has it. In the end, Sweden got it, but I got good position out of it anyways. Some interesting dynamics here. I finally pulled the trigger and talk to Ottomans and say, hey, listen, it's time to go anti-Safavid. And this, I had been planning for a while, but I didn't feel great about, just because, again, I mentioned earlier, the Safavids were probably the player I had the strongest press with. I got along very well with the Safavid player. However, I think this is the power that I alluded to earlier that Russia simply cannot get along well with. I don't know, maybe you'd be able to do it, but it's just so hard to resist because you've got this big concentration of dots in Central Asia, concentration of dots in the Caucasus, and it's very hard for both sides to resist going for those power centers. And if, as is usually the case, more often than not, if you have an alliance, you don't grow at exactly the same speed at all times. So if ever one power has the advantage over the other, you've got to think that there's a temptation to stab for these border regions that are incredibly dot rich.
Yeah.
And again, I'm thinking this Safavid player, compared to the others, I'm getting the impression that he is the strongest player in this area. So as much as that makes him potentially a great ally, it also makes him a potential threat of like, okay, if he, as he seems to be doing, continues to make great progress against the Mughals, and maybe I decide to stab Ottomans with the Safavids, well, the Safavids are going to get really big. And as we all know, the Safavids eventually run out of places to get their dots from. So that could go very poorly for me.
Yep.
Whereas the Ottoman player, it had been looking dicey for the Ottoman player, right? They had this, it seemed like they were getting into trouble on almost all sides. Well, ignore the fact that they actually have pretty good success here, which alarmed me in the end.
It was unexpected.
In spring, it did not look like they were going to do particularly well, right? And in the previous year, so I sort of had locked them in as a power teetering on the edge. So I thought that, one, they would be more willing to work with me, and two, I wouldn't be risking as much of a threat of empowering them into becoming a problem for myself. I did, however, not trust them entirely. So you'll notice I moved to Shapsu here. And the idea with that was if I, had tried backfilling Kabardia and then Kabardia doesn't go anywhere, then I haven't wasted my move and I'm stuck in Kharkov. Yeah. Again, this idea of Kharkov being such a key place to be able to build, I wanted to ensure that would be open for a build.
Yes, that makes sense.
But things go well. I get put into Derbent. I also managed to take Uzgen. And I'm hopeful that I'm not going to face too much pressure from Mongols, although they did attempt to save the. I mean, even with Sangpa, so I don't really know what's going on there. I get what I want, and the Safavids have only gone deeper into the Mughal territory. So any talk of hey, support me and I'm not going to push against you, they don't hold to. So the Mughal player, I think, continues to have a greater threat than I, and I, have stuck to my thing of saying, hey, listen, I've taken Yarkand, I'm just going to stay there. However, the big disappointment is yet to come. Everything so far has gone pretty smoothly. Karakoram. I thought I was the clever one supporting Ming, and there was some back and forth, and there was even, coming up with very good moves to counter the Qing. And yet, in the end, Ming still opted to go the other way. So that is very disappointing. And this moveset, we would have captured Orgu had Ming taken my support. But they opt to instead support Qing against me, which very, very frustrating. I mean, I have the retreat to Meds. I'm having builds, so you can bet I'm going to build Krasnoyarsk. And I'm going to immediately have 3 armies surrounding Karakoram with additional armies in Yarkand and Zaisan that can... tap Turfan or attack Turfan if that's a risk to supporting Karakoram or Qing Karakoram. So, I've got, it's not the end of the world, but I'm realizing, okay, this would be a really big challenge if I'm facing a combined Ming and Qing force, as it appears to be the case. And Qing, of course, bounces me out of Yakutsk.
Yep.
The Inuit happily back off and start pointing to being more aggressive against the Qing. So I'm grateful that at least they seem to be willing to do that.
Yeah. I assume this was a planned bounce then. But
it's interesting. I don't know whether it is, because I don't think Qing ever agrees to Inuit moving to Aldan, right?
Yeah, that's a very
I think this is just an attempt to take a dot off of the Qing.
Yeah. I think ascribing...
Which, it's fair, right? You can imagine Kikuhar in some world, or Chichar, I don't know how you'd pronounce it, might want to support Orgu or backfill Orgu, so they took their chance and it did not pan out.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think Pastor Man, was a C-dot player who may not have thought about the long term as much as he should.
I see what you mean, C-dot, take dot, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So why don't you walk us through your fall?
And we may as well keep talking about the Inuits player, because this shit happens. And once again, I didn't really trust Inuits to stop attacking me, but as part of this whole Dutch thing, I thought, well, Athapaska stabbed Inuits, so Inuits might want to stop attacking me, and they might want to go towards Athapaska. And importantly, England and I had supposedly pieced out so I could stab the Dutch, and England stabs me again. And this is the worst move I made all game, which was this move out of Quebec. And because I went for this big read of well, England and I are doing this, and I really want to build in Quebec. So I'm going to move up, I'm going to get position over here against an Inuits player I'm unsure about, so how about I move out of Quebec? And England just walks in. So very, very catastrophically terrible turn for me in North America here, because England does indeed continue to attack me, which is just shocking. And more to the point,
I remember being shocked by that Quebec move. What I can't pretend being shocked about is the Ville-Marie move, where that was the move I was alluding to earlier, where the English were insisting that the Athapaskans support them to Ville-Marie. And I said, listen, man, you should be grateful that the Athapaskans are working with you here. Be happy to give them the support. It'll be beneficial.
I was trying to ride this line with England where I was like, I assume that because you're the one who agreed with me, that all the others are going to be making you support them against me. And they said, Athapaska want Ville-Marie and Inuits want Anticosti. And I'm like, well, why don't you go with me then and go in a line where actually you're going to get some dots out of it? And it turns out Pastor Man did not have the wherewithal to realize that they could force England to support them to Anticosti. So Inuits attack me and get nothing. Yeah. While Athapaska has stabbed them and they continue to be attacked by Athapaska, and it just...
And that was it. England was playing hardball when they really had no ability to. There's a part of me that admires it, right? The fact that they were able to
the fact they got into Costa
negotiate, from a position of weakness and make some real gains. Yeah. But Athapaska didn't stand for that, and thankfully, they did. Well, not in your case, but thankfully for the Athapaskans and for the English sake, they and for my sake as somebody happy to see Athapaska grow stronger at the expense of everybody else in the region, they took my advice to be happy enough to support to Ville-Marie.
The player I'm unhappy with the moves here with is Inuits, because in my view, they're being attacked by Athapaska, and they stab France, who's the one nation who's willing to help them.
And they continue to be stabbed by Athapaska. It's really interesting.
Exactly, and I'm kind of piecing them here. Like, I'm doing a few moves up towards England. I moved to Atikameku, but that's mostly so I can get the build, because I thought Algonquin would be moved to.
I guess the logic is, they see, Athapaska's a threat, but not a threat they can do anything about. They need dots to counter that threat, and you do not immediately have the ability to put them into any dots. So that must be it. I don't know, Yeah,
the other thing was this was also a phase where I was convinced that England was indeed piecing me out because of a message by Athapaska where they were furious at England. They messaged me and said, England's told me they're not attacking you anymore. How the hell did you pull this off, you wizard? Like, you've ruined my plans and everything. And again, very good play by Athapaska because I bought it. And I thought...
What was... It's funny, though, was then later reading the Athapascan Void at the end of it, and I didn't expect this, but they went on quite a while about how scary Russia was. And I was like, I thought we were getting along really well, but I think they were very alarmed by the fact that it sort of took me all of 5 minutes to convince England to support Athapaska when they had been very stubbornly resisting Athapaska's request.
Absolutely, yeah. So I don't know whether England kind of did a bit of a mind change here about whether actually siding with me. But the interesting thing is that if I'm England and I'm going to continue attacking France, I don't stab the Netherlands. But as we see here, England do in fact attack the Netherlands.
Because the Netherlands weren't particularly attacking them, were they?
They had stabbed them. They're taking Jamestown.
They had previously, but okay, I see. They still do take Jamestown.
So they still take Jamestown. Netherlands think that me and them are solid. Yeah, so there's whole lots of shit going on here, and I do convince English to
not. The Netherlands also supports France into Antigua.
Poland.
Poland into Antigua.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah, which is very funny, because this is Poland's reaction to, I stabbed France and it didn't work. I just said, well, how about you attack England then? And England get into Barbados, which is very
fairness, right? Like, Poland's in damage control mode. They want to take dots, and the worst thing they can do is get stranded somewhere where nobody's going to ever dislodge them and they can't disband.
Yeah. So Netherlands and I had this trade deal, which it's a very common one, which is where France gets Philadelphia and New Amsterdam and the Netherlands get Cayenne and Kalina. Very common 2-for-2 trade deal. And I tried to bounce them out of Kalina to stab them by not giving them Kalina. Right. But it didn't work. They supported themselves in.
Yeah.
And of course, a better player would have moved to Belém and just taken that, but I had no way of knowing which troop was going to Kalina.
Well, I was just thinking a better Dutch player would have supported Carib to Kalina, but hey, what do we know?
Yeah, well, I guess they're worried about Spain. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because there's all sorts of dynamics across the board.
Carib's just a very strong place to be, right?
Yes, Carib is a really nice territory. So I fail in protecting Kalina, which was part of my stab on the Netherlands, was I'm going to do all of this stuff. Yeah, Inuits get into Brat, which is very interesting. Yeah, you help England into Iceland, naughty boy.
Well, listen, I'm trying to hurt the Swedes.
Yeah.
That's the be-all, end-all of my motivation there.
Yep. I managed to take Ghent, which is really nice here. So Köln supporting the fleet in. England do move to the Channel as part of their re-stab on me, which I'm sad about because I wanted to build another fleet in Nantes and just really get the Navy going.
Mm-hmm.
I also didn't expect London to be open, which, they get to build there, which is really sad. Yeah, so England went about this in a very odd way where they attacked Netherlands and me at the same time while convincing me to stab Netherlands. And I said to the Netherlands instantly, like, I'm so sorry, we need to kill England again. They completely duped me and they attacked me, so they're the enemy number one
now.
Yeah. This here was very sad with Florence, because it was the fact that Austria had done this nice move set. Florence was always agreed to be a French dot, but this was the only moveset that guaranteed we got Florence, because Austria we assumed we're going to attack Rome in some capacity. So we went, well, you're going to lose Rome, so how about we get you into Florence? And of course they keep Rome and they get into Florence. So
no, and then Ottomans did a whole bunch of stuff they've got no business getting. They manage a huge convoy into Naples. They walk into Tunis for free. Like, this is fall, people. Cover your dots.
What is going on? Like, why is Algiers moving to Chamba, not Tunis?
And where, like, I think they go +4 this year. What else do they get? Okay, they get Agadez.
Yes.
They get Agadez, and is it Mara, the last one? Yeah, it's Mara.
Yes, they're in Mara.
So they go +4 here, which is a pretty huge turnaround for what looked to be a kind of dire Ottoman position. And like an army in Naples is so aggressive, right? Like that has a lot of potential to continue pushing up that Italian peninsula.
Yeah. And notably, it's a restab on Austria, who is fighting Spain, and it's a complete mess between the three of them.
And Austria is just walking out. Yeah, no, like it's just such a disaster.
Yeah.
Now, a couple of interesting things. So I mentioned how frustrated I was with this Qing and Ming collaboration on me. And part of it had come from, like, Ming strongly believed, because Qing very intelligently went to Ming as soon as the phase began and told them, I'm going to cover all my dots. Just so you know. There's going to be no walking out. And if the Qing support Outer Mongolia to Karakorum, with the support coming from Orgu, then there is no world in which Ming can capture any Qing dot. I can get one. Ming can support me into one, but, you know, everybody's looking at this position knows that it's Ming who's, you know, the one who's due a dot from a potential Russia-Ming alliance.
Yeah.
So they went to Ming and they told them, I'm not going to let you get anything. You know, like, you want to support Russia, fine, but you're getting nothing. Which Ming came to me very unhappy about and said, well, hey, like, how are we going to do this? And, you know, I'm coming up with positions to try to tell them, well, what if we, you know, we complete for position now, and then in the spring we'll get you a dot, and so on. Or, you know, don't believe the Qing, they're just pulling you on, or maybe can you offer to work with them and then influence moves otherwise? And they're saying, no, it will never work, until finally they come around and say, wait, no, actually, Qing has agreed to attack Karakorum from Orgu. I'm like, well, that's perfect. You'll be able to take Orgu. And they agree, yes, let's do that. Now, you're seeing the proof on your screen that that's not what happened. And I went extremely disappointed to Ming, and they told me, sorry, I forgot to change my move.
Yeah.
Turns out that was the case. I kind of believed them at the time. It was hard to believe them, but they have since, you know, like in post-game void and everything else, said, like, genuinely, this was a mistake. But my goodness, this really soured the relationship between me and the Ming, and made it that we were in a position that we were not going to ever have a ton of ability to work together, because one, you know, we had the position to cripple the Qing player and just pick them apart, but we missed that, right? The Qing are going to have a chance to stabilize. The trust between us is damaged. I'm retreating to Tumeds, which is an extra dot on, or an extra army on their dot in Turfan, and I'm now, you know, just, again, like, very, very uncertain of who I can trust in this situation. So it was it killed a lot of momentum. And of course, Ming, again, and this is why I was so appalled by this, Ming doesn't gain anything, right? Like, it's Qing getting the dot. Ming could have had a dot, but they don't take it, which means that Ming is actually, relative to sort of some of our board leaders, including myself, losing pace.
Yes.
Which makes it is an additional challenge to running an alliance. So if there's a big mismatch between the two, because the one guy, you know, who's ahead won't want to slow down, and the power who's behind is trying to catch up, and so it can be hard to find yourself in a scenario where you're both happy working together and see it as a mutually beneficial relationship. So this was a small but super costly mistake in terms of just missing that one order. It is also funny because I said as we were about to adjudicate, I put in my void, like, why do I feel like I'm about to get dunked on? Like, I had a bad feeling. But my bad feeling came from the Caucasus. I thought I was going to get, the Ottomans had been very low press. They said, yeah, sure, let's stab Safavids. And I never heard from them again. I'm like, okay, this feels like I might be the one getting stabbed. Nope. Ottomans supported me. They grow massively themselves as well, so it doesn't look like they're going to have any resentment towards me growing. And it's on the other side of the map where I do, in fact, get dunked on.
Yeah. Something always happens when you're a big nation. I successfully get into Jacob Fort, which is really nice. And Poland had asked me to let them back into Gene so that they could get back that direction. There's no chance I'm doing that. If they sit still and support themselves in Jacob Fort, I need a dot, so tapping Gene is the way to secure that. There's, of course, the chance that Poland could have tapped in Dakaru here, but I took the gamble that they were not.
Or you could have tapped Fulani. I guess you're worried that they might tap in Dakaru, yeah.
Yeah, true. But I figured Gene is nice because if nothing else, I get to blow up an army and hopefully convince them to blow up an army in disbands.
Well, and England is getting massacred with nothing to show for it. They lose everything.
Absolutely. It's a complete disaster for them. I support Portugal down. I mean, we're all still continuing to work together. It's all good fun. And Portugal stabs Jacaranda for real this time. Like, they've actually gone in. I'm continuing.
Kind of afraid not. Like, you see, even Jacaranda is not making any pretenses of holding on to Burundi. They're out of there.
Absolutely, and they make sure they get Bunyoro because everyone's
losing Mara at the same time.
Losing Mara, Abyssinia's coming. Yeah, all of this stuff, and they do actually walk out of Seychelles because I think they decided to trust me. Because I told them I was stabbing the Dutch.
Yeah.
So I said, no, I'm going. I decided Jacaranda does not have the space to start leaking France stuff across the map and make me hate them as well. Jacaranda need to trust me, so I'm going to just tell them I'm taking. I can't remember which one I told them I was taking. I think I probably didn't tell them which one so that they couldn't leak it, but I told them I was stabbing the Dutch. And I nabbed Ceylon, which is a really
And the Portuguese get Madurai.
Yes. I know, it's so funny how that happened.
And I was thinking, I wasn't really paying a ton of attention to the huge year the Dutch were about to have, because as you say, despite getting a lot of stabs on the Dutch, they still go +4 in terms of supply centers.
Yeah, it's a huge turn for them, and because they stab Ayutthaya as well. They start making.
They must have been so disappointed, right? Because think about how huge their turn might have been.
Yes. Oh no, and this is, I think, part of the reason why I did it was just they're going to grow out of control.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. But like I said, it's a risk. Yeah.
Probably the main reason I did it was to try and get an ally in North America again, because Athapaska clearly had a Vlad hate vendetta. Or not hate, but France must die, colonials need to die, and was infecting Inuits and Ute with that from the start of the game. Yeah. And we see Ute and Spain peace. I mean, what the hell is going on?
I mean, I can see that. Like, neither of them were gaining any dots off of this, really. Like, I guess, there was nothing guaranteed there for anybody, so may as well back out of it. I mean, look at that. Like, especially with the Spanish gracefully offering Cherokee to the Uchishon, I think that's a very reasonable deal for both of them. And I mean, Spain has quite a good year.
Yeah, it's not a bad year at all.
So as we go in, I wrote a summary in my void. The Dutch stabbed France. France stabbed the Dutch. Spain stabbed England. France made peace with England. England stabbed France anyways. England stabbed the Dutch. The Dutch stabbed England. Portugal stabbed the Dutch. Portugal stabbed England. Portugal and France are still friendly. Spain and Netherlands are still friendly. Lovely bit of chaos. And that was when my spectator JMS said, yes, but they're both still +17 overall. All that nonsense, and colonials are still on the up and up. I think only England actually went negative this year amongst the colonials. And this is where I think there was a bit of a solidification of the narrative of, okay, Spain and Netherlands and France and Portugal are the sort of the two alignments, because as far as we regionals could tell, those were the only two pairings among the five of you where there was no conflict.
Well, no, me and Spain were never in conflict.
Sure, but I mean, it's it's hard to tell. You're making assumptions, You don't know always what's arranged or not. So
yeah, when you look at this kind of thing.
There. Yeah, I miss Spain and France actually in that particular. It's an interesting dynamic, and yeah, the North American triple was looking a bit funny, but Inuit clearly getting the North impressive work by Athabasca. Exactly, the North American triple minus Inuit.
Like Athabasca played this game extremely well.
Like the Inuit offense is contributing to the triple, but not their defense.
Yep, I mean, it's ridiculous. Let's bring up.
And then the Ottomans, the Athapascans, and the Mapuche had the best years amongst the regionals.
Yes, and we can see them all here, Graham, and Russia, if we count you.
Yeah. I guess I was not thinking of myself.
Yeah. So Netherlands got stabbed by tons of people all across the board and still went +6. Or they
went +4.
Yeah,
I think two disbands. Yeah.
That makes sense. And I think I went +3 and had the one extra. Yeah, and Portugal +8 years, so they're on the big up.
Yeah, no, Portugal had a huge year.
Yeah. We probably should leave it there for now because I don't think we're going to get another year done before you need to go.
No, but the years will start to go by a lot faster. I think year 1 and year 2 are always the most important years of the game.
Yep. I suspect it may be a 3-parter if we get 3 years done in each of the others, but this is also shorter. This is not going to be a 3-hour video. This is like 2 hours. So it's been super fun. Is there anything we want to say end of the first video? Like, I don't know. This is our situation.
No, I think it's all good.
Yeah.
We'll pick it up later.
Yeah, we'll catch you in the next one.